Los Angeles, Orange County. Stuck in traffic? We've got the answer.
So working a crash in Santa Clarita, the North 5 just past the 14. Many cars involved. Most of them have been cleared, but we've still got a lot of traffic backed up to the 210. North 5 also heavy from Rosecrans to the 605. Our traffic report brought to you by the California Office of Traffic Safety, reminding you to silence your mobile distractions and use a designated sober driver this holiday season. I'm Lee Berry, AM 870, The Answer.
Singer Natalie Cole has passed away. Randy Fuller has details.
This will be an everlasting love.
The daughter of legendary singer Nat King Cole and a star in her own right has died where she was born, in Los Angeles. Cole passed away from congestive heart failure. The Grammy Award winner had a kidney transplant 6.5 years ago after being diagnosed with hepatitis C. The singer had battled drug addiction and a number of other health issues since the 1980s. Cole is best known for her hits This Will Be, Our Love, and a virtual duet, which paired her with a recording of her late father singing Unforgettable. Natalie Cole was 65 years old. Randy Fuller, Los Angeles.
Gunfire at a Rolling Heights home has left 4 people dead. Authorities say it began last night when a man shot and killed another man at a home on Baston Avenue. The man then turned the gun on 2 women, killing them both. The suspect's son managed to wrestle the gun away from his father and shot him once, killing him. Sheriff's deputies say they don't know why the suspect started shooting the people, but all but 1 victims were staying at the residence. The 33-year-old son was arrested on suspicion of murdering his father. Meanwhile, investigators working to find out why a man was shot to death in Pomona this morning. The victim was found dead of a gunshot early today at Rebecca and 4th Street, according to Pomona police. Officials say he was riding a bicycle at the time he was gunned down. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Southland weather, sunshine today, upper 50s to mid-60s for our high. Partly cloudy tonight, 40s to around 50s. Saturday, sunny, then partly cloudy, increasing clouds Sunday. Chance of rain next week. In Burbank, it's 58. L.A., 60. I'm Larry Marino. Michael Medved is next.
I'm Bruce Vail with Your Money Now. The start of a new year is a good time to analyze your credit cards. Lots of people love cards that give them frequent flyer miles, but for many people, they may no longer offer the best value because airlines have made it hard to earn miles and even harder to use them for award tickets. For people who travel only a couple of times a year, cards that offer cash back now may offer the best value. The stock market ended the year with a whimper, and as a result, 2 of the 3 major stock indexes had declines for the year. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 2.2%, with a good chunk of the 398-point decline coming Wednesday and Thursday. Declines on those 2 days also left the S&P 500 with an annual loss for the first time in 4 years. The Nasdaq Composite was the bright spot as it rose 5.7% in 2015. The markets are closed today for the holiday. That's Your Money Now.
Hi, this is Han Sardo, 4th generation of the Sardo Interiors family, wishing you all a very Merry Christmas and a happy and prosperous New Year.
If you're retired or retiring soon, starting this year with a good financial plan is critical. This is Ken Moraif, host of the Money Matters radio show. Please attend our free seminar.
Get a current analysis of what to do in today's market. Find out how to protect your retirement from a market crash and more. Choose 1 p.m. Saturday, January 9th, Ayers Hotel, Manhattan Beach. Tuesday, January 12th, Pasadena, Old Town. Wednesday, January 13th, Woodland Hills. Or Thursday, January 14th, Santa Ana. Reserve at moneymatters.net. That's moneymatters.net or call 800-994-0302.
Get the AM 870 The Answer app now at the App Store or Google Play. This is the Larry Elder Show. Larry Elder.
We were talking earlier about the minimum wage, and I was telling you that at one time teenagers were more likely to be employed than adults. That changed with the implementation of the minimum wage. They just raised the minimum wage so that eventually it'll be $15, which comes to $30,000 a year. $30,000 a year, even in L.A., means that you're not homeless. How come they can't find a job at $15 an hour?
The Larry Elder Show.
Because they're not worth $15 an hour. That is why so many employers say L.A. is the worst place on the West Coast, up and down, in order to do business. Has it ever occurred to these morons at L.A. City Council that by raising the minimum wage, you are pricing low-skilled people out of a job in the first place, and then you have the nerve to go BMW about homelessness? Are you kidding me?
El Dorados, we have a country to save. Larry Elder. The Sage, he's back. Larry Elder, weeknights at 9. Following Hugh Hewitt at 6, AM 870, The Answer.
Hi, it's Hugh Hewitt here with Aaron from California Deluxe Windows.
At California Deluxe Windows, each window is custom-made. Then they are installed using our proprietary technique that is so precise, we never break your walls. Your house could be covered in potato chips and we wouldn't break one. I will give you 20% off of your entire order and 1 year of interest-free financing. But you have to call right now.
Call California Deluxe Windows at 877-WINDOWS. That's 877-WINDOWS.
CCLB number 774518.
Here's your seat, sir. 2A.
Thank you.
Thank you for flying with us today. Sir in 2A, where did you get that suit? It really is first class.
Thank you. Ask him.
Hi, I'm Roger of Roger Stewart Clothes. At my store, you'll find the exact suit you want in your size in modern, slim, or classic fit from our huge selection, and save up to 70% off retail prices. We have a huge selection of superbly tailored European suits from the best Italian fabrics. Shirts, slacks, ties, belts, sport coats, and formal wear. And at Roger Stewart Clothes, you'll always get the inner circle, friendly customer service you deserve.
Does he always travel with you?
Coincidence.
Okay, where'd he go?
Dennis Prager here, 877 Suits for You. That's 877 SUITS, the number 4, the letter U. 877 Suits for You, Roger Stewart Clothes. Suits that should be expensive, but they're not. They are the finest suits I've ever owned.
Hi, it's Hugh Hewitt. Happy New Year's to you.
From our family to yours, from Michael Medved.
It's the Happy Conservative Warrior. I'm Mike Gallagher.
This is Dennis Prager, wanting to wish you and yours a Happy New Year.
Happy New Year from all of us at AM 870, The Answer.
And now, America's #1 show on pop culture and politics. This is the Michael Medved Show.
And another great day in this greatest nation on God's green earth. A great day to confront a great, deeply significant anniversary. It's about 100 years. Yeah, that's right, 100 years, a full century since the beginning of World War I. It was supposed to be the war to end all wars. It didn't work out that way. And confronting the anniversary of that war, it's also an appropriate time to confront a painful question for Americans. Did we make a profound mistake by getting involved in this incredibly bloody and destructive conflict? That's the subject of this very special broadcast of the Michael Medved Show, World War I, the Great War or America's greatest mistake. The music of Over There, the unofficial battle song that sent American doughboys across the Atlantic, 2 million of them, to battle in the trenches of Europe. That song captures some of the optimistic spirit at the beginning of the war. It's a song by George M. Cohan, the great Broadway composer, the author of Grand Old Flag, I'm a Yankee Doodle Dandy, Give My Regards to Broadway, so many hits. He wrote the song just days after Wilson had declared war on Germany, which was nearly 3 years after the war itself had begun in Europe. And some of the words of the song Over There indicate some of the problems about the decision to go to war. Because while it's very stirring and Over There sort of implies that Americans don't really know where they're going or why, there is no explanation anywhere in the song of what we're fighting for. In fact, the closest thing you have to declaring a purpose for the war in Over There is hoist the flag and let her fly, Yankee Doodle, do or die. Pack your little kit, show your grit, do your bit. Yankee to the ranks from the towns and the tanks, make your mother proud of you, and the old red, white, and blue. But what exactly was there to be proud of? World War I has never been called by anyone, ever, the good war, the way that World War II was. It hasn't been seen by any of the participants as a necessary war, an inevitable war, a war that needed to be fought. In fact, the great British historian Paul Johnson writes, the Great War of 1914 to 1918 was the primal tragedy of modern world civilization. The main reason why the 20th century turned into such a disastrous epic for mankind. The casualties of the war were simply staggering, unimaginable. And not just for the Europeans. In Europe and in the limited battles in Asia that occurred during World War I, total battlefield casualties were at least 10 million. 10 million. And another probably more than 10 million civilian deaths, a total of 20 million dead. And while America only entered the war very late, in fact, America only participated in the war actively because even though we declared war, it took months and months for Americans to be drafted, to be mobilized, and then to be sent across the ocean and trained and equipped. America was only involved in the war from May of 1918, actively, until November of 1918. And during that period, 117,000 young American men, our finest, 117,000 died. Believe it or not, at least 206,000 very seriously wounded. This is a devastating war. In terms of bloodshed, not even the Civil War, in terms of the amount of killing per week in the conflict, not even the Civil War could equal the bloodiness of World War I. Certainly World War II didn't. We bled, and we bled, and we bled. And not just human blood, but money. The expenditures in World War I, again, staggering. It is astonishing. We spent more in World War I, more than 10 times more than we did on the Civil War. That was the cost to the federal government in Washington. 10 times more than the Civil War, which lasted 4 full years and cost even more American lives in sheer numbers over those 4 years. We also spent more than twice the amount of money on World War I than the entire total operating costs of the federal government from 1789 when it was established up until 1917. It was amazing. Our federal budget, and these figures, you can check them out. They are just hard to even imagine. But our federal budget went from less than $1 billion a year, the year that Wilson became president, 1913, to the end of the war from $1 billion to $13 billion, inflation adjusted. We've never had a rapid expansion, both of the size of government and the amount of government spending that we did then. And oh yeah, how'd they pay for it? They raised taxes. Now the income tax came in for the first time, the federal income tax permanent came in 1913, Wilson's first year as president. But the top rate for super, super rich people was 7%. The top rate by the end of the war, 77%. Okay, this was a disastrous growth in government, a disastrous growth in spending. And the amazing thing is, the American people began by not wanting it. They watched the war in Europe and they thought it was mad. They thought it was crazy. They felt themselves incredibly lucky to be in the United States and far away from the European theater. There was an editorial right at the beginning of the European War, which began in August of 1914. The plain dealer of Wabash, Indiana, stated, "We never appreciated so keenly as now the foresight of our fathers in emigrating from Europe." In other words, thank God we got out of that crazy place. And Jessica Tuckman, who was the author of the Pulitzer Prize-winning bestseller, The Guns of August, about the origins of World War I, she wrote on the 50th anniversary of America's entry into World War I, 1967, in April. She wrote an interesting essay called How We Entered World War I, and she recalls that newspaper cartoons of the time always depicted Uncle Sam sitting and looking sort of askance over a large body of water at far-off squabbling group of little figures representing the Europeans. In one case, one of those cartoons, Uncle Sam reminds himself that the chance of his life is to, quote, sit tight, keep his hands in his pockets, and his mouth shut. In another case, they show Uncle Sam, he's standing shoulder to shoulder with President Wilson. They both have their backs turned to Europe, where there are barbarians and labeled as barbarians who are dripping blood. So how is it we went from this abhorrence to war? And the fact that war was just wildly unpopular. People, this is before the era of public opinion polling, but there were very, very few Americans who wanted us to get into the European war. How did the European war start? It started because of the breakdown of two empires in the south and the central part of Europe. The Ottoman Empire, the Turkish Empire, which was falling apart, and the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And what happened is a famous assassination, June 28th of 1914. There was a visit to Bosnia, which was a province of Austro-Hungary. And it was a visit by the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, who was the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne. He was going to become the emperor. And he had a pregnant wife. Both he and his wife were killed in their carriage. They were murdered. And it was fairly horrible and bloody, and the odds were against it, but they were murdered by a Serbian nationalist who wanted Serbia, which was a rising power that had gotten its independence from the Ottoman Empire, the Turkish Empire, and it wanted Bosnia. Yeah, all these sounds familiar, right? What all of this shows is that Otto von Bismarck, who was the chancellor who built modern Germany, remember, Germany only came into existence as a country in 1871. He was once asked, will there ever be a great war in Europe? And he said it could be. And they said, Mr. Chancellor, if there is a great war, what will start it? And he just muttered, some damn fool thing in the Balkans. That's what happened. How did the war grow out of that damn fool thing in the Balkans that Bismarck had predicted? And how is it that America, this great and peaceful nation, as Wilson described us, that America got dragged into that war? We'll talk about that and much more in this very special edition of the Michael Medved Show.
To purchase this special program, World War I, The Great War, or America's Greatest Mistake, go to michaelmedved.com.
Get breaking news on AM 870, theanswer.com.
Have you ever thought, I wonder if I should finally try eHarmony? Well, now is the perfect time. This is eHarmony founder Dr. Neil Clark Warren. Right now, our free communication weekend is on. This Wednesday through Tuesday only. Free communication weekend means you get unprecedented access to eHarmony. So don't wait. Visit eHarmony and connect for free. This Wednesday through Tuesday only.
The following is not an actor, but a real-life story from Trinity Debt Management.
I had numerous credit cards, and I was struggling with paying them off.
If you're in debt and you need help, call Trinity at 1-800-758-5360 to talk to a certified counselor.
I had heard about Trinity, so I made the call. They took care of all of my credit cards, and now I am completely debt-free.
Trinity will consolidate your accounts into one easy-to-manage monthly payment, put a stop to late fees and over-limit charges, reduce your interest, and possibly improve your credit score. You'll save thousands.
The people at Trinity are very friendly. They will do whatever you need them to do in order for you to feel better about being in a very difficult place.
If your debt has you down, call Trinity at 1-800-758-5360.
My name is Ann, and I'm debt-free for keeps.
1-800-758-5360.
If you're one of the millions of Americans who suffers from back pain, there's new hope for relief without the use of over-the-counter pain pills. Australian Dream, makers of the popular arthritis cream, now offers a back pain cream. It's real medicine that goes on fast and provides effective relief for simple backache. Australian Dream Back Pain Cream has no odor, doesn't burn, and isn't greasy. And it's backed by the Empty Jar Guarantee. Love it or send back the empty jar for a full refund. Find Australian Dream Back Pain Cream now at Walgreens.
Stuck in traffic? We've got the answer.
Accidents now cleared in Santa Clarita, the North 5 just past the 14. Traffic still bogging down back around the 210. Eastbound 210, also a slow ride from San Gabriel out to Myrtle. Our traffic report brought to you by the Foundation for a Better Life. Winston Churchill's words stirred his country in the face of defeat. Today they inspire us to reach for our own victories. Commitment, pass it on. From the Foundation for a Better Life at values.com. I'm Lee Berry, AM 870, The Answer.
I'm Anthony Siccaro, host of the Providence Financial Retirement Show, and my job is quite simple, and that is to take all of the noise that you hear out there in the media and read in the papers about what's going on with the economy and help you bring it down to earth and make sense of it all. What good is everything you hear about the world of investments if you can't put it to use in your own portfolio? So if you want to learn how to protect yourself, please join me every Saturday morning at 7 o'clock a.m. right here on AM 870 KRLA The Answer.
Peyton and attorney spokesperson. The Sentinel Group with principal office in Temecula, California is responsible for the content of this ad. This ad is not legal advice, and the choice of a lawyer should not be based solely upon advertisements. Services may not be available in all states. Attention, if you or a loved one took Xarelto or Pradaxa and experienced a serious bleeding event, you may be entitled to cash compensation. Call 800-341-0345 now. Xarelto and Pradaxa are prescription blood thinners used to reduce the risk of blood clots and stroke. Dangerous side effects have been discovered, which have led to numerous cases of hospitalization and even death. Call 800-341-0345 now if you or a loved one took Xarelto or Pradaxa and experienced internal bleeding or were hospitalized for a serious bleeding event. Don't be a silent victim. Call 800-341-0345 now to see if you may be entitled to a cash award and substantial financial compensation. Time is limited to file a claim, so call 800-341-0345 now. Lines are open 24/7. Call 800-341-0345. That's 800-341-0345. 800-341-0345.
From our family to yours, Happy New Year. AM 870, The Answer.
And on the Michael Medved Show, you can save 15% or even more on car insurance with Geico. Just go to geico.com or call 1-800-947-AUTO. The only hard part, figuring out which way is even easier. In 1914, Americans were listening to ragtime, like this Stop Time rag by the great Scott Joplin, a great African-American ragtime composer, wildly popular at the time. And Americans were also preoccupied with baseball in the summer of 1914, including President Wilson, who was a big baseball fan. He was our first presidential full-out baseball fan. He followed baseball very closely. He, in fact, was the first president who ever got to throw out a first pitch. No one records whether it was a strike or not. But given the fact that Wilson was not particularly athletic, probably not. Meanwhile, in Europe, the powers of Europe were getting ready to blow one another up. And it's extraordinary how unmoved most Americans were by what was going on in Europe. Now, you might ask why. The truth of the matter is that many, many people look back on World War I, and they sort of read it in the context of World War II. World War II, the Allies really were fighting evil. Nazi Germany was about as close to pure evil as a nation has ever been. The militarists in Japan were certainly evil, and in terms of their mass killing of people that they occupied and their desire to build their empire through blood, very dangerous powers. Now, none of the powers on any of the sides in World War I were like that. The European map had been reshaped very dramatically in the years leading up to the war, actually the 50 years leading up to the war. The decline of Austria-Hungary, the decline of the Ottoman Empire, had created all kinds of chaos. But meanwhile, in Central Europe, the emergence of Germany as a world power was the most important factor in European history in the last half of the 19th century. Before Bismarck brought Germany together, it had been separated into a series of smaller states, states like Saxony and Hesse and Bavaria, Bayern. These were all separate countries, many often with their own separate dukes and electors and crown princes. Through Blut und Eisen, blood and iron, Bismarck helped to unite Germany, and united Germany emerged as the Second German Empire in 1871. Now, this does not mean that they meant to continue conquest. They were busy consolidating, and in terms of the improvement in standard of living, no country in the world could equal what Germany was doing, except perhaps the United States of America. Great prosperity, great industrial power, great military power, and Germany came late to the game of empire in which Britain and France, and to some limited extent Belgium and Holland, were already engaged, and Germany wanted an empire of its own. None of this made war inevitable. What made war inevitable was, well, basically nothing. And there was a sense of powerlessness based upon alliances that had been formed. The assassination of the Archduke of Austria-Hungary, which was Germany's close ally. Of course, they both spoke German. They were related. By the way, all the crowned heads of Europe were related. The Kaiser of Germany, the hated Kaiser Wilhelm, who became an object of intense anti-German propaganda, was actually the grandson of Queen Victoria. Yeah, really, the Queen of England was the mother of many children. One of her children was the mother of Kaiser Wilhelm. So he was first cousins with the King of England, King George V, who was on the other side of the war. He's also first cousins with Tsar Nicholas of Russia. And in fact, they had a very warm friendship, Tsar Nicholas and Kaiser Wilhelm. And there's one famous photo, and it's the most haunting thing because literally over 5 million people died in fighting between Germany and Russia. 5 million people. And Kaiser Willy and his cousin and very good friend, Tsar Nicky, at one point they were vacationing together, and they decided to switch uniforms. And there's this famous picture of the Tsar of all the Russias, the autocrat of Russia, wearing the spiked helmet, the Pickelhaube of the Kaiser. And then you can see the Kaiser, he's wearing the Tsar's full uniform. And they were that close. So what happened that led to this war? When the Archduke was killed, the Austrians, including the aging Emperor of Austria, were very, very concerned about this Serbian nationalism that was going to upset their empire, and they wanted to punish the so-called Young Bosnia movement, and they made several demands of Serbia, saying that if Serbia didn't meet those demands, they would come in and impose them forcibly, and this was basically demands to curb back Serbian nationalism. Now, Serbia had just won 2 small Balkan wars in the 10 years before. So they were feeling pretty confident, and they were feeling pretty ready to resist Austria-Hungary, especially since Serbia had a commitment from Russia to support them. And Austria-Hungary had a commitment from Germany to support them. And meanwhile, Russia had a commitment from France to support them, and France had a commitment from England to support them. So the war exploded, and soon everyone mobilized. What's fascinating is to look at this heartbreaking correspondence between Nicky and Willy, the Tsar of Russia, and the Kaiser of Germany, because here's what happened, is the Tsar sent a telegram to his cousin. They corresponded in English because Nicky didn't speak much German and Willy didn't speak much Russian, but they both spoke English. And Nicky wrote, an ignoble war has been declared to a weak country, meaning Austria attacking Serbia. I beg you in the name of our old friendship to do what you can to stop your allies from going too far. And then the Kaiser wrote back to his cousin, I cannot consider Austria's action against Serbia an ignoble war. I therefore suggest that it would be quite possible for Russia to remain a spectator of the Austro-Serbian conflict without involving Europe in the most horrible war she has ever witnessed. They didn't hold back. they plunged forward. And the most famous comment on all of this was from the Foreign Secretary for Great Britain, Edward Grey, the first Viscount Grey of Felladon. He served as Foreign Secretary longer than anyone in British history. And as people were mobilizing at every turn and the crowds were gathering and they were cheering, he wrote this. He said, "On August 3rd, we were standing at a window of my room in the Foreign Office. It was getting dusk, and the lamps were being lit in the space below on which we were looking. My friend recalls that I remarked on this with the words, 'The lamps are going out all over Europe. We shall not see them lit again in our lifetime.'" Prophetic words and an incalculably bloody and destructive war. But why should it involve the United States when Americans so much resisted the idea of involvement? That story involves the strange personality of one man, Woodrow Wilson, which we get to coming up.
Portions of the Michael Medved Show are brought to you in part by the Discovery Institute. To learn more, click on the Science and Culture banner at michaelmedved.com.
This is AM 870, The Answer.
Stuck in traffic? We've got the answer.
Santa Clarita, the North 5 just past the 14, an accident now clear, but traffic pretty heavy back to the 210. Downtown L.A., the North 110 at Olympic, a two-car crash still blocking the two left lanes. That has you on the brakes from Adams. Eastbound 210 through Pasadena, pretty heavy drive from San Gabriel Boulevard out to Myrtle. I'm Lee Berry, AM 870, The Answer.
President Obama is going to tighten the nation's gun rules within the next few weeks. The president announced the upcoming executive actions in his weekly address.
A few months ago, I directed my team at the White House to look into any new actions I can take to help reduce gun violence. And on Monday, I'll meet with our Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, to discuss our options.
The president has complained for months that gun laws need to change following the rash of mass shootings. He warned Congress he would act unilaterally if lawmakers fail to pass legislation. The White House says the president wants to expand background checks on buyers and impose other restrictions. Unforgettable. Singer Natalie Cole has died. The daughter of Nat King Cole reportedly died from congestive heart failure at an L.A. hospital, brought on by complications from a kidney transplant and hepatitis C. Cole is best known for her hits This Will Be and Our Love. She was 65 years old. With 73 years of combined experience sitting in a metal box high above Colorado Boulevard, Bob Eubanks and Stephanie Edwards signed off from their Channel 5 Rose Parade duties today. Eubanks and Edwards told station management this would be their last year after 38 years anchoring the parade for Eubanks, 35 at the parade for Edwards. Sunny today, highs to the mid-60s. We have rain coming in starting Sunday night. It's 55 in Van Nuys, 61 Los Alamitos. I'm Vicki Cox. Michael Medved continues next.
I'm Pamela, event director with AM 870 The Answer. Did you know that your favorite radio station is on Facebook? Now you can find out instantly what topics your favorite talk show host will be discussing and up-to-the-minute news. This is also your opportunity to connect with your favorite radio personalities and interact with other AM 870 The Answer listeners. Follow us today on Facebook at KRLA 870 AM. Want more answers? Go to am870theanswer.com. That's am870theanswer.com.
Tired of working hard to make someone else's dream come true? Always dreamt of being an entrepreneur? Hi, I'm Karen Franklin, CPA and co-owner of ERSOP, Entrepreneur Rollover Stock Ownership Plan. ERSOP has helped thousands of people own their own business by using their own retirement funds as startup capital. The ERSOP plan is completely legal and pre-approved by the IRS. Live your dream. Invest in yourself. Call ERSOP 866-693-7767. 866-693-7767.
Larry Elder here with a tantalizing bit of information about my exotic Western Mediterranean cruise next August, where you can join me. One of our overnight stays will be on the island of Ibiza, the birthplace of Christopher Columbus and the now undisputed party capital of the world. Get ready to dance. This amazing cruise is aboard the luxurious Crystal Symphony, the very best. And the cruise is all-inclusive, which includes air travel, unlimited drinks, that's right, adult beverages, excursions, taxes and fees, tips, all included. I will be your captain. Sign up early to get your choice of luxurious accommodations. Just log on to am870.info and use the keyword Larry. That's am870.info, keyword Larry. It's all put together by my friends at Willett Travel, a Frosch company. Call 800-994-5538. That's 800-994-5538.
You ready to let the dogs out? What? Do what?
Hi, Warren Eckstein here. Coming up on the Pet Show this week, the great debate. Are dogs smarter and more social than cats, or is that an urban legend? The truth about cats and dogs. You may just be surprised at the answers. Saturday mornings at 11 a.m. on AM 870, The Answer.
You're listening to a special show, World War I, The Great War, or America's Greatest Mistake, on The Michael Medved Show.
Historian Paul Johnson wrote of Woodrow Wilson, "No more complex personality ever ruled the White House." That's a very polite British way of saying he was weird. And he was exceedingly weird. In fact, a few pages later, Paul Johnson writes about Woodrow Wilson's personality, which is crucial to understand when talking about America's lead into war. There was indeed a streak of selfish egotism in Wilson, a self-regarding arrogance and smugness masquerading as righteousness, which was always there and which grew with the exercise of power. Wilson, the good and great, was corrupted by power, and the more he had of it, the deeper the corruption bit, like acid in his soul. This was directly relevant to America getting into World War I, as was the fact that we have never had, a president with less leadership, less executive, less political experience than Woodrow Wilson. No, not even Barack Obama. Barack Obama had been in a lot of campaigns. He ran for the state Senate. He ran for Congress and lost. He won for the U.S. Senate. Woodrow Wilson ran for only one office in his life before the presidency. That was for governor of New Jersey. He won election. He was nominated by the Democrats within a year and a half after being elected as governor of New Jersey. Now, he had gained some fame as president of Princeton University, but he'd gained fame because he fought a lot of battles with the faculty and with the alumni, nearly all of which he lost. He was considered to be a fighting, progressive, enlightened president of Princeton, which is why he was appealing to the Democrats who wanted a reformer to run for governor of New Jersey and then eventually to run for president. This question about becoming president with so little experience, yes, less experience than Sarah Palin had when she ran for vice president. She had also been governor for less than 2 years, but she had also been mayor of Wasilla and she'd been city councilman. Wilson, nothing. So after he was president-elect, and he won because the Republicans divided their votes between Teddy Roosevelt, who ran an independent progressive campaign, former president, and President Taft, who was the incumbent. When Wilson won, one of the people who had contributed a great deal to his campaign came to Wilson and said, "Well, I hope you appreciate what I did for you." And Wilson said, "God ordained that I should be the next president of the United States. Neither you nor any other mortal or mortals could have prevented it." Ouch! This is a guy who takes himself very seriously. In fact, at the Versailles Conference at the end of World War I, Georges Clemenceau, the leader of France, said of Wilson, he thinks he is another Jesus Christ, come upon the earth to reform men. Look, this is problematic, and it stems from his background. His father and his grandfather on his mother's side, and his wife's father and his second wife's grandfather were all Presbyterian ministers. He was deeply, deeply religious. In fact, it is recorded that when he was in the White House, he read the Bible every day. He said grace before each meal, and he got down on his knees and prayed every morning and every night. He was also an elder in the Central Presbyterian Church in Washington, D.C., and he often went to Wednesday evening prayer meetings. He was one of our most religious presidents, but he tended to be the chief savior of mankind in his own mind, not anyone else. Wilson grew up in the South. His first memory, he said, was of his father coming to him. His father was a Presbyterian minister and a leader of the breakaway from the Presbyterian Church because they supported slavery. Wilson's father came to him when they were living in Georgia and said, "Lincoln is elected, now there shall be war." That was Wilson's first memory. He was always sick. He never learned to read before he was 9 years old, and he was a brilliant guy. But he had all the illnesses that had him withdrawing from prep school and then going back and withdrawing again. When he started college, he had to quit because he was too sick, and then he went back to Princeton. Eventually, he got a Ph.D., and he became a very famous professor because of his writing and his lecturing. But his seminars were always lame, which highlighted a factor about Wilson. For a politician, and that was how he ultimately followed his destiny, he was very unusual because he didn't like people. He didn't like them at all. He thought they were vile. He looked down on them. He was great with a lecture, but couldn't do a seminar. He was the opposite of President Bush or President Clinton. President Clinton was good with a podium in front of him. He was good with people one-to-one. President Bush, good with people one-to-one, not so much as a speaker. Wilson? Well, his strengths and weaknesses determined the path to war. More on the way.
To order this special show, go to medvedhistorystore.com.
Keep it right here on AM 870, The Answer.
Hi, it's Hugh here with Andrew Del Rey, 844-LEND-USA. We talked about refinancing. We talked about getting pre-qualified. But, Andrew, I want to also talk about the fact that reverse mortgages are increasingly popular. You specialize in them. They're for people who are 62 years and older. If they call you up at 844-LEND-USA, how long will you spend with them to explain what a reverse mortgage is?
It's just one call, and it takes about 15 minutes.
And is it that complicated, really?
No, it really isn't. There's just a lot of misinformation out there, and so there's a lot of elderly people that are just concerned that they might lose their house or that it's some sort of weird program, but it's actually federally insured by the government, and it's not for everybody, but the ones that they're for, it's nothing less than a godsend.
If you're 62 years old and you own your own home, or mom and dad do, go to HughHewitt.com, click on Andrew Del Rey at the Sierra Pacific, or pick up the phone and call 844-LEND-USA, or go to www.lendusa.com. Talk about reverse mortgages. Do it today.
Have you ever thought, I wonder if I should finally try eHarmony? Well, now is the perfect time. This is eHarmony founder Dr. Neil Clark Warren. Right now, our free communication weekend is on. This Wednesday through Tuesday only. Free communication weekend means you get unprecedented access to eHarmony. So don't wait. Visit eHarmony and connect for free. This Wednesday through Tuesday only.
You're a small to mid-sized business with 300 to 3,000 employees. You face the same network security challenges as big businesses do, but can't support a big IT investment, leaving your doors open to advanced cyber threats. Barracuda next-generation firewalls provide all the core features of enterprise firewalls and UTMs, but without hidden costs and deployment hurdles, making owning a big business firewall no big deal for your SMB. Reclaim your network. Try a Barracuda next-gen firewall risk-free at barracuda.com/firewalls.
Stuck in traffic? We've got the answer.
Accidents now cleared in Santa Clarita, the North 5 just past the 14th. Traffic still bogging down back around the 210. Eastbound 210, also a slow ride from San Gabriel out to Myrtle. Our traffic report brought to you by the Foundation for a Better Life. Winston Churchill's words stirred his country in the face of defeat. Today they inspire us to reach for our own victories. Commitment, pass it on. From the Foundation for a Better Life at values.com. I'm Lee Berry, AM 870, The Answer.
Hi, I'm Aaron of California Deluxe Windows. Please tune in this Saturday at 6 p.m. for my show, Mr. Liquid Wood, on AM 870, The Answer.
Aaron, what are you going to talk about this week?
The adjective happy, pleased, joyful, blissful, and exultant. Achieve all these states of mind and you will have a happy new 2016.
Tune in Saturday at 6 p.m. to the Mr. Liquid Wood Show, right here on AM 870, The Answer.
No baloney.
The angels from Visiting Angels are standing by to care for the loved ones in your life who need in-home care. If you have a family member or friend who needs assistance at home with hygiene, meals, light housework, errands, or companionship, I hope you'll consider Visiting Angels, America's choice in senior home care. If you know someone who wants to remain independent, these are the people who can help. Rates are surprisingly affordable, and up to 24-hour in-home care is available. You can even select your caregiver before care begins. Franchise opportunities are also available. With more than 500 franchised locations nationwide, there's an office near you. Call toll-free today at 877-374-LIVE or online at visitingangels.com. For senior home care from the real-life angels of Visiting Angels, call toll-free 877-374-LIVE. That's Visiting Angels, America's choice in home care at 877-374-LIVE or online at visitingangels.com.
Like us on Facebook. Just search for AM 870, The Answer.
Find a great deal on a brand new car at Autotrader.com. Compare prices and special offers on new cars from local dealers. Autotrader.com, the ultimate new car marketplace. When war erupted in Europe in August of 1914, Woodrow Wilson reacted the way that most Americans reacted, with horror and with fear of America somehow getting involved. His first reaction to the war was that the country must not let itself be, quote, thrown off balance by a war with which we have nothing to do, whose causes cannot touch us. So said the President of the United States, and he initially counseled his fellow countrymen to remain neutral, not only in deed, but in thought, not to favor one side or the other, with the two sides arrayed against one another, with Great Britain and France and Tsarist Russia on one side, and Germany and Austria-Hungary and Turkey, the Ottoman Empire, on the other. Part of the problem with Wilson's initial reaction to the war, and all of his biographers point this out, is he was distracted. He was distracted in the most painful way possible by the death of his wife. He adored his wife. In fact, his great friend and advisor, his chief advisor during war years, Colonel Edward House, said he had never known a man to be so dependent on the company of women. Wilson didn't like most people. He liked women. He liked bright women. He liked women who adored him. And when his wife Ellen took sick, she had Bright's disease. She was fading, and ironically, she died the same week that World War I broke out in 1914. The president was inconsolable and distracted, and applied himself to his work, but kept referring to his life as a burden, to his work as a burden. And meanwhile, his personal physician, Dr. Carrie Grayson, had been told in the last words of Mrs. Wilson, "You must take care of my husband after I am gone." And he had understood that to mean that the president needed another wife. He was introduced to a very handsome widow, named Edith Bowling Galt. She was a direct descendant of Pocahontas. And she was, like Wilson, from the South, with very strong Southern loyalties. Wilson's Southern loyalties were so strong that he was always one of those who romanticized the Confederacy. And when the movie in 1915, Birth of a Nation, the deeply racist pro-Ku Klux Klan movie by D.W. Griffith came out, Wilson had a special showing in the White House and ordered all his cabinet members to go see it. He said it was like writing history with lightning, and alas, all of it is so true, which probably would not be, if you take a look at that movie today, politically acceptable at all in our modern era. But President Wilson was drawn to Mrs. Galt. She had inherited a jewelry store from her late husband, which she ran. He was, and even though it was less than 6 months after his wife had died, he became very quickly involved with the new woman who gave him a whole new lease on life. The press began to pick it up, and one Secret Service man who reputedly got into deep trouble with the president and the future second Mrs. Wilson because of it, said, "She is a very handsome woman, but rather more plump than is the fashion today. This is not something you want to say about the future First Lady of the land. And Edith Bowling Galt was not somebody to be trifled with, from the old Virginia stock that I mentioned. One thing that happened early on is the president became engaged and the country became enraged, or at least Republicans did. He was approaching a re-election. There was a chance for his re-election at the time he met the future Mrs. Wilson. And there was a great a deal of rumor mongering, none of it true, and the historians are pretty clear about this, about him having been involved with some other woman and having poisoned his wife and having gotten involved with Mrs. Galt beforehand. None of that was true. And in fact, he defied his political critics by going out in public with his new romance. And at one point they went to the theater, and the Washington Post, which was a sympathetic paper, reported on their evening at the theater, and they had a very a delightful sentence. They said that in the presidential box, Mr. Wilson largely ignored the play and instead spent a delightful evening entertaining Mrs. Galt. All right, very nice. Unfortunately, there was a typographical error, or at least history says there was a typographical error, and that sentence came out in the Washington Post in their Sunday morning edition. It said, in the presidential box, Mr. Wilson largely ignored the play and spent a delightful evening entering Mrs. Galt. This was a disaster. A White House aide was the first one who spotted the typo, and he started calling all over town. Wilson was beside himself. This was ready to be a national crisis. Immediately, they sent people all around Washington to grab copies of the paper with the error into it. Wilson went to his wife, or his fiancée, and he said, I release you from the engagement. She said, don't be silly, don't worry about it. But this was a nightmare for him. There was also a problem because an aide in the British embassy, shortly after that, told a joke at a dinner party. It got back to the president, and he demanded that the aide be recalled and sent home to Britain. And remember, Britain was a nation at war at this point. Relations with Britain were very important. What the aide had said at the dinner party was he had said, I understand that there was a very remarkable reaction on the part of Mrs. Galt when President Wilson first proposed to her. And then everyone said, well, what was that? What was her reaction? He said, she fell out of bed. This also enraged the president. Sigmund Freud, yes, that's Sigmund Freud, hated Wilson for lots of reasons. And after Wilson died, he sat down with William Bullitt, who had been an American diplomat, and he wrote a biography of Wilson in which he was trying to psychoanalyze him. This is the founder of modern psychiatry. And Freud and Bullitt wrote about Wilson's boyhood, saying, Tommy Wilson always tried to be on the side of the angels. He endeavored to think about serious matters and attempted to express his thoughts in distinguished phrases. He was so serious about himself that others took him seriously. To make fun of him was easy, to ignore him was impossible. He was a prig, but a prime prig. Just the man to take us to war. More on the way. Get breaking news on AM870TheAnswer.com. Probably like me, you've heard of friends or family members even who have met on eHarmony. Now, I bet you've even heard firsthand some of eHarmony's great relationship stories. Maybe you've even thought, I wonder if I should finally try eHarmony. This is Michael Medved, and this New Year's weekend you can try eHarmony for free. That's right. eHarmony's free communication weekend with extended days is on this Wednesday through Tuesday only. Free communication means you get unprecedented access to eHarmony, including sending messages to people who interest you. It's the first step in finding that perfect someone. Look, eHarmony has helped over 1 million people get married. They make over 10 million matches every day based on their signature matching system. And eHarmony matches on qualities that really count in a happy relationship. So what are you waiting for? Visit eHarmony eharmony.com. And connect for free this New Year's weekend, Wednesday, December 30th through Tuesday, January 5th only. eharmony.com. That's eharmony.com.
I'm feverish and stuffy, but I still see you checking out my sweet cough cloud. See, when I cough, I make a cloud of 3,000 droplets of saliva. Impressive, no?
No.
But your eyes say yes.
Ugh, cough clouds are sick. Take new Robitussin CF Max Severe. It delivers powerful relief of cough, sore throat, stuffy nose, and fever. Robitussin, because it's never just a cough. Use as directed.
This Sunday on the Barack Lurie Show, Barack will talk about the most significant developments of 2015 and predictions for 2016. Barack will also explore his theme, between conservatives and liberals, who seeks to alter or even erase history and why. For past shows and articles on these subjects and others, log on to am870theanswer.com. Click on the Inside Advantage and Lurie and Seltzer. Tune into the Barack Lurie Show, right here, now extended on Sundays from 10 to 11:30 a.m. with attorney Barack Lurie of Lurie and Seltzer.
Wake up, you're all finished. Now, take a look at your beautiful new smile.
Wow, feels like I just dozed off. And you're finished already? Thank you.
Having healthy teeth is easy when you visit Smile Magic Dentistry. Walk in with broken or neglected teeth, walk out with a beautiful, healthy new smile, all done while you sleep. And they make it so affordable with free exam, free x-rays, and free sleep. Dr. Ray at Smile Magic is so good, his patients come to him from all over the country because they won't trust anyone else to work on their mouth. A healthy body starts with healthy teeth. Don't live with broken, loose, or neglected teeth another day. Be one of the next 25 callers to Smile Magic and get free exam, free x-rays, and free sleep. A $1,500 value. Free! With 0% financing for the next 12 months. Call Dr. Ray at Smile Magic Dentistry now. 888-929-SMILE. 888-929-SMILE. That's 888-929-SMILE. 888-929-SMILE.
Read the latest headlines on our website, am870theanswer.com.
Portions of the Michael Medved Show are sponsored by Wellspring Benefits Group. Learn more at controlmycare.com.
Woodrow Wilson was serious about neutrality, and that was certainly true of his Secretary of State. His Secretary of State was William Jennings Bryan, who had 3 times been the Democratic nominee. He got the job largely because Wilson owed him, and owed him big time. Bryan had thrown his support to Wilson at the Democratic convention, allowing him to win a somewhat surprising nomination. And Bryan was somebody who had opposed American imperialism, opposed the imperialism that followed the Spanish-American War. He was associated as a Christian pacifist. And Wilson agreed with him that money represented the worst contraband because it commands everything else. In other words, opposing loans to any of the combatants in the war, if they were going to stay neutral, they had to avoid loans. But the problem was that this would hurt American business. William Gibbs McAdoo was one of the people in cabinet closest to Wilson, partially because he was Wilson's son-in-law. He had married Wilson's daughter. And he wrote to Wilson in August 1915, a year after the war had started in Europe, "Great prosperity is coming. It will be tremendously increased if we can extend reasonable credits to our customers. To maintain our prosperity, we must finance it." And then Robert Lansing, who was a counselor in the State Department, wrote, "If European countries cannot find means to pay, they will have to stop buying, and our present export trade will shrink proportionately. The result would be restriction of outputs, industrial depression, idle capital and idle labor, numerous failures, financial demoralization, and general unrest and suffering among the laboring classes. Oh, and yeah, and may I also add," he didn't have to add, "you're going to lose your re-election bid in 1916. So Wilson quietly, without announcing it, dropped the ban on American banks loaning to anyone who was a combatant, and basically said, okay, you can go ahead and loan to the Allies. Why not loan to the Germans? Well, because the Germans couldn't buy anything. There was a British blockade. Remember, the British Navy ruled the Atlantic Ocean, and they basically said no ships are going to be allowed to dock anywhere near Germany or any Allied countries. They were trying to starve Germany into submission in the midst of the war. So we ended up with American banks sending a great deal of money to Britain and to France in particular so that they could buy American supplies and weapons. That money, the first breach in the idea of neutrality in both thought and deed, was the beginning and crucial in drawing America into war, even though the public remained deeply, deeply opposed to it. The story of how that happened and public opinion began to shift, and how Wilson, the most unlikely of all war leaders, he was known as the schoolmaster in politics, or he could have been the preacher in politics. How did he become this great war leader who led America into a disastrous war? That and more, part of the story of what helped to produce the 20th century and 21st centuries for the greatest nation on God's green earth. This is AM 870, The Answer.
As we say goodbye to 2015, we say hello to 2016. This is AM 870, The Answer, a division of Salem Media Group. On the NASDAQ is SALM. Live streaming on the web, AM 870, The Answer app, KRLA, Glendale, Los Angeles, Orange County. Wishing you a Happy New Year. Stuck in traffic? We've got the answer.
In Arcadia, the East 210 at Santa Anita, an accident still plugging up the carpool lane. Traffic jams up back to Allen. Downtown L.A., the 110 north at Olympic, two-car crash now cleared. Traffic is recovering pretty heavy back to the 10. Our traffic report brought to you by Fletcher Jones Motor Cars. Almost 9,000 clients made their Mercedes-Benz dreams come true at Fletcher Jones Motor Cars, and they're still the #1 dealership for the 17th consecutive year. Fletcher Jones Motor Cars. I'm Lee Berry, AM 870, The Answer.
Singer Natalie Cole has died. She was 65.
Cole won 9 Grammys.
Unforgettable in every way.
And through the magic of technology, Cole got to perform with her late father, Nat King Cole.
And forevermore. And forevermore.
Natalie Cole died in Los Angeles from what her family called complications from ongoing health issues. In a 2011 interview, Cole said she had hepatitis C.
I was an IV drug user back in the early 80s.
Her sons say Natalie Cole died how she lived, with dignity, strength, and honor. I'm Ed Donahue.
As the 127th Tournament of Roses parade came to a close this morning, somebody took to the skies to share a political message. The words, "America is great, Trump is disgusting, and anybody but Trump," appeared in skywriting over the beginning of the parade route, according to the San Bernardino Sun. 5 planes spread out in the skies above Pasadena, each creating the all-caps slogans. A drunken driver mowed down a jogger on the parade route 2 hours before parade time this morning. Horrified spectators watched as emergency crews loaded the woman into an ambulance with head injuries. A 40-year-old L.A. resident named Yuki Horn was arrested several blocks away for felony drunken driving. 4 people were transported to area hospitals in Long Beach just a short while ago from a reported shooting at a home in an area of 33rd Street and Magnolia Avenue in Long Beach. Sunny today, highs to the mid-60s. Tonight will be in the upper 30s, mid-40s. We got a chance of rain starting Sunday night through Thursday. It's 61 degrees now in Santa Monica. In Irvine now, it's 60. I'm Vicki Cox. Michael Medved continues next.
Do you worry that the stock market is a huge bubble ready to pop? If you're retired or retiring soon and can't afford to lose your life savings to the next stock market crash, don't miss the next free Money Matters Retirement Seminar. Choose 1 p.m. Saturday, January 9th, Ayers Hotel, Manhattan Beach. 7 p.m. Tuesday, January 12th, Courtyard, Los Angeles, Pasadena, Old Town. 7 p.m. Wednesday, January 13th, Hilton Woodland Hills. Or 7 p.m. Thursday, January 14th, Holiday Inn, OC Airports. Please reserve now at moneymatters.net. That's moneymatters.net or call 800-994-0302.
Larry Elder here with another highlight of my exotic Western Mediterranean cruise next August aboard the luxurious Crystal Symphony, the very best. It's all-inclusive, air travel, unlimited drinks, excursions, taxes and fees, tips, all included, plus sessions with me. We finish up in Barcelona with a full day and night using our cruise ship as our hotel. And what a city, a blend of Greek, Phoenician, Roman, Carthaginian, and Gothic cultures, also home to Picasso and Dali. Come explore Barcelona with me on an included excursion. I will be your captain. Sign up early to get your choice of luxurious accommodations. Just log on to am870.info and use the keyword Larry. That's am870.info, keyword Larry. It's all put together by my friends at Willett Travel, a Frosch company. Call 800-994-5538. That's 800-994-5538.
A new year brings resolutions. Some will resolve to get in shape or start a new hobby. Some will resolve to finish a project or start a project. Some will resolve to completely change everything. Yeah, well, we resolve to not change at all. That's right, we're staying the same. We'll be bringing you the best coverage of breaking news and the most stimulating talk. Hey, stick to what you're good at. From AM 870, The Answer.
Hi, Hugh Hewitt here from my friends at Ursop. Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Are you ready to own your business but wondering where the cash will come from? I'm here with the answer. Steve Cooper and Karen Franklin of Ursop.com. ERSOP stands for Entrepreneur Rollover Stock Ownership Plan. Ursop allows you to invest the money from your 401k or other retirement funds. You do so without taxes or penalties. It's not a loan. It's completely legal, but it's not a simple process. It is one, however, that has been mastered by my friends Steve and Karen. With over 55 years of experience, ERSOP.com, Ursop.com, has what you need and no one else has, a team of attorneys, CPAs, and retirement experts who will walk you through the entire process. Banks aren't lending, so take charge of your own future. Go to Ursop.com, ERSOP.com, or call Steve or Karen at 866-693-7767. That's 1-866-MY-URSOP, 866-MYERSOP.
Having healthy teeth is easy when you visit Smile Magic Dentistry. Walk in with broken or neglected teeth. Walk out with a beautiful, healthy new smile, all done while you sleep. Be one of the next 25 callers to Smile Magic and get free exam, free x-rays, and free sleep. A $1,500 value. Free! With 0% financing for the next 12 months. Call Dr. Ray at Smile Magic Dentistry now. 888-929-SMILE. That's 888-929-SMILE. 888-929-SMILE.
Hugh Hewitt here with Aaron, founder of California Deluxe Windows, folks. If you're looking for new windows, I've been walking through the 10 reasons you ought to invite Aaron into your home to talk about it. Reason number 10, they're getting you. The best record of any person I've worked with in terms of customer satisfaction over 25 years in the broadcast business. People love you.
Thank you, Hugh. It's very kind of you. Yes, they get me, they get my philosophy, they get my team that deeply believes in a philosophy that I have, and they like the fact that we take complete responsibility for everything, whatever it takes to make homeowner happy. That's what our slogan is.
Just another one of the many reasons you ought to call my friend Aaron. Aaron, you're one of the kind. Friends, do not forget, 20% off your entire order and 1 year of interest-free financing with great credit. That's California Deluxe Windows in Chatsworth, Anaheim, and now in La Crescenta. 877-WINDOWS, 877-WINDOWS. That's 877-WINDOWS. He will indeed say,
your house can be covered with potato chips, and we wouldn't crack one.
CCLB number 774518.
This is Larry Marino. This week on Sunday Morning Newsmakers, a look at prognostications, predictions, and interesting facets and facts of American life in the year 2016. We'll talk with Janice Stillman, editor of the Old Farmer's Almanac. Sunday Morning Newsmakers, Sunday morning at 9 on AM 870, The Answer.
And now, America's #1 show on pop culture and politics. This is the Michael Medved Show.
And another great day in this greatest nation on God's green earth. Not only a great nation, but a greatly fortunate nation. And Americans have never felt so fortunate, so privileged, so protected by a benign and smiling providence as we did at the end of 1914 and throughout most of 1915. Why? Because America was at peace. We were safe from all the bloodshed and all the horror and all the destruction that was going on in Europe as part of World War I. And the overwhelming majority of Americans, I mean by very, very huge numbers, wanted to stay out of the war at all costs. So what changed? How did we go from that sentiment to a situation where 2 million American young men were sent across the Atlantic Ocean into the hellish fighting in Europe? That's the subject of this very special broadcast of the Michael Medved Show. It's called World War I, The Great War or America's Greatest Mistake. The strains of the patriotic rallying song Over There by George M. Cohan, saying that the Yanks are coming, the drums rum-tumming everywhere. That wasn't a song that Americans were singing until 1917, after Woodrow Wilson decided, and yes, it was a personal decision ultimately, to take America to war. 2 years earlier, back in 1915, Americans were actually singing a very different tune.
I didn't raise my boy to be a soldier. I brought him up to be my pride and joy. Who dared to place a musket on his shoulder to shoot some other mother's darling boy. Let's take and elaborate their future trouble. It's time to lay the sword and gun away. There'd be no war today if mothers all would say, I didn't raise my boy to be a soldier.
Believe it or not, this was the number one hit of the entire year, 1915. The song was a sensation. I didn't raise my boy to be a soldier. And the purpose of the song was very transparent, was very real. What you just heard, I know the lyrics are hard to understand, were I brought him up to be, I didn't raise my boy to be a soldier. I brought him up to be my pride and joy. Who dares to place a musket on his shoulder to shoot some other mother's darling boy? Let nations arbitrate their future troubles. It's time to lay the sword and gun away. There'd be no war today if mothers all would say, I didn't raise my boy to be a soldier. And then the final verse says, what victory can cheer a mother's heart when she looks at her blighted home? What victory can bring her back all she cared to call her own? Let each mother answer in the years to be, remember that my boy belongs to me. And the sheet music for this song is astonishing when you look at it. The antique sheet music from 1915. It shows a white-haired mother gripping tight hold of her boy who's sort of kneeling in front of her in front of a fireplace. And there's sort of a thought balloon where the mother is imagining the battlefields of Europe and she's hugging all the tighter to her son. Now, not everybody gave a positive review to this song, even though it was very, very popular. Theodore Roosevelt, the former president, who was a big advocate for America taking a stronger line and for American preparedness above all, because we had a very small army at the time. We did not rank among the world's great military powers because we had disarmed so entirely and dramatically since the Spanish-American War of 1898. But in any event, Teddy Roosevelt said that I didn't raise my boy to be a soldier would appeal to precisely those sorts of people who would say, I didn't raise my girl to be a mother. He suggested that the place for women who liked the song and who opposed war was in China, or by preference in a harem, and not in these United States. And there were lots of parodies of the song, I didn't raise my boy to be a soldier. It was so popular. It was such a sensation. They said, one of the parodies was, I didn't raise my boy to be a coward. Another one said, I didn't raise my boy to be a soldier, but I'll send my girl to be a nurse. And another said, I didn't raise my dog to be a sausage, which I guess is probably a good and reasonable idea. Groucho Marx said that one of his favorite jokes of the time concerned a poker game in which a card-playing mom says, I didn't raise my boy, he had the joker. Okay, this was the way America felt. And the difficulty for Woodrow Wilson was that he felt the same way. He clearly did not want to take the nation to war, but he also tilted without any question at all toward the British side. And the British were increasingly engaged in what was an incredibly bloody war. Just to give you some indication, the casualty figures that were piling up in Europe as Americans watched in horror, they read in newspapers, increasingly they saw newsreels because they had newsreels in cinemas. The Battle of the Marne in September 1914, right after the war began, the British and French won a decisive victory, but they had 260,000 casualties in a week. in a week. This dwarfed anything in the American Civil War. Nothing was this bloody in the American Civil War, which before had been the record holder. I mean, 82,000 Allied troops died at the Battle of the Marne, about the same number of German troops, more than 150,000 people slaughtered in a week. By the way, later in the war, still before the Americans got in, the Battle of Verdun, it's unbelievable. There's been no battle like that really in history, except maybe the Battle of Stalingrad in the next World War. But at the Battle of Verdun in 1916, 700,000 dead. More killed in that one battle than in the entire 4 years of America's Civil War. No wonder Americans did not, in any case at all, want to get involved. But the problem was that it was tough to stay out when there were so many commercial interests in the United States and so much sentiment in support of the Allies. In other words, there seemed to be a consensus in the United States that people wanted Britain and France to win. They did not want Germany to win. That was particularly true after the cries of bloody Belgium went up. To invade France, which the Germans felt they had to do to protect themselves, the Germans, when they were fighting the war, felt encircled because they had Russia on one side and they had France on the other, both very formidable nations. And they were going to be forced to fight a two-front war. The French were also reinforced by about 1 million Brits who were fighting over in France. So the Germans felt that they had to strike first and immobilize France, and then they knew they'd have a longer war against the Russians. But to get to Paris, they had to sweep through Belgium. At least that was the decision of von Moltke and the other German military leaders. During the course of sweeping through Belgium, there was a great deal of hardship. There was a great deal of killing. The Belgians were officially neutral. So cries of bloody Belgium went up, and even those Americans who might have said, well, these two sides, they're both fighting for reasons that remain somewhat obscure, it put the Germans in a very bad light, especially with British propaganda very active in the United States. But even though most people in the United States of America tilted toward the British side and toward the French side, there was no desire on the part of most people, with the singular exception of Theodore Roosevelt and people who followed him very, very strongly, to get directly involved in the war. And that led the Secretary of State of the United States, William Jennings Bryan, who wanted above anything else to keep the world at peace. He had strong pacifist inclinations. He had been a long-time anti-imperialist. He opposed any loans to any of the belligerents or allowing any Americans to even travel into the war zone, because he rightly assumed that if you did that, that would raise cries for American involvement. The difficulty here was that the British were instituting a total blockade of Germany. They were planning to starve Germany out, and they had the ships and the Navy to do it. And the Germans, using what was a very frightening new weapon at the time, the submarine, the U-boat, the Unterseeboot, the Germans were determined to stop the flow of munitions to Britain. So how did that implicate the United States? In a decisive and bloody way. More coming up.
You're listening to a special show, World War I, The Great War, or America's Greatest Mistake, on The Michael Medved Show.
Keep it right here on AM 870, The Answer.
Have you ever thought, I wonder if I should finally try eHarmony? Well, now is the perfect time. This is eHarmony founder Dr. Neil Clark Warren. Right now, our free communication weekend is on. This Wednesday through Tuesday only. Free communication weekend means you get unprecedented access to eHarmony. So don't wait. Visit eHarmony and connect for free. This Wednesday through Tuesday only.
If you've heard Mike Gallagher talk about his mortgage company, then you've heard about Sovereign Lending Group's low 30-year hybrid fixed-rate mortgage loan, 1.75%. That 2.4 APR works on a $300,000 home with at least a 700 FICO score and an 80% loan to value. Did you hear that? A fixed rate mortgage at 1.75%. And as if 1.75% is not enough to get you excited about a refi or buying a new home, get this. SLG Mortgage has a 7-year rate guarantee. If rates drop during the first 7 years of your loan, they'll refi you for free. Now you know why Mike Gallagher is so excited about Sovereign Lending Group. Do you think you've got the lowest rate? Make one more call to SLG Mortgage, and they'll beat any competitor's rate. Get in touch with them right now by calling 800-310-1057. That's 800-310-1057. Or you can visit Mike'sLender.com. Mike'sLender.com.
Business Loans Now is most known for 60-minute approvals and same-day funding for businesses across this greatest nation on God's green earth. This is Michael Medved for Business Loans Now, where your business cash flow is way more important than personal credit. Funding can be used for cash flow, equipment, payroll, and startups. Business Loans Now can also help with additional funding if your business has recently been underfunded by another lender. To find out how much your business could qualify for, I encourage you to visit businessloansnow.com.
Stuck in traffic? We've got the answer.
Traffic's still pretty heavy through Arcadia. The East 210 at Santa Anita, an accident still blocking the carpool and fast lane. You're on the brakes back at Alton. It stays heavy out to Irwindale. Our traffic report brought to you by Toyota of Orange. For 40 years, no one has sold more Toyotas in Orange County than Toyota of Orange. With 2,500 vehicles to choose from, you're going to get the Toyota you want at the best possible price, period. I'm Lee Berry, AM 870, The Answer.
It's a new year. Time for a fresh start, a fresh look at things. This year will be a big year in America. We'll elect a new president, and with it, change the dynamic of the country for years to come. So will we see another Clinton in the White House? Or another Bush? Or Trump, Sanders, Rubio, Cruz, Christie? Yeah, there's too many to list. One thing is certain in the new year. We'll be here to bring it all to you. Happy New Year. From AM 870, The Answer. A new neighbor has joined the AM 870, The Answer family. Mark Levin is here.
You know, we're being told that you need to have experience to be president of the United States. Barack Obama has been an incredibly successful man, not president, but man in what he's wanted to do. He wanted to take down this country, and he's taken us down. He wanted to turn American against American, and he's turned American against American. He wanted open borders. He's got open borders.
Mark Levin is right here, right now.
He wanted to turn this economic system inside out. He's turned it inside out. So what is it about governing experience, ladies and gentlemen, that we need? We don't need governing experience in the context of people who know how to govern a massive Leviathan federal, centralized, iron-fisted, increasingly police state government. We want people who have the character and the courage to undo it, to reverse what's been done, to embrace the Constitution.
There's a new sheriff on AM 870, The Answer. Mark Levin. Mark Levin is here. And he's live from 3 to 6 p.m. Join the revolution and talk on AM 870, The Answer. Champagne and sparkling cider for everyone. Happy New Year. AM 870, The Answer.
Find a great deal on a brand new car at Autotrader.com. Compare prices and special offers on new cars from local dealers. Autotrader.com, the ultimate new car marketplace. In the first months of World War I, the United States remained optimistic that we could maintain our neutrality, stay uninvolved, but we could still make a lot of money selling munitions, selling supplies, selling food, selling everything to the belligerents. That was a fiction, said the Secretary of State, William Jennings Bryan. He believed that Wilson would have to choose between his desire to see British victory and his desire to maintain American neutrality. And he would also have to choose between neutrality and affirming neutral rights. Now, what did that mean? What that meant was that Britain imposed a sea blockade, what was called a hunger blockade. They controlled the seas. The British Navy was the greatest navy in the world by far. Germany had built up a very formidable navy to challenge the British. They actually fought a standoff at the Battle of Jutland, huge naval battle. Neither side won decisively. But what that meant was that the British still controlled the Atlantic Ocean. And when they imposed their hunger blockade, it was even referred to in that way, was basically determined that they would starve Germany to a standstill, and perhaps even to surrender or to pulling back or to stalemate in the war that was raging on French soil in Europe. With all of this going on here in the United States, the Germans still believed that the American government would maintain its neutrality. One counselor in the German embassy in Washington seemed to know better. His name was von Haniel, and he sent back a message to his bosses in Berlin reminding them that, a quote, American feeling was the outgrowth of a natural connection with England in history, blood, speech, society, finance, and culture, and that in the present case, commercial instinct and sentiment point in the same direction. And what that direction meant was that within 3 months of the beginning of the war, Wilson had agreed to permit unrestricted trade in munitions and to lift the ban on loans and to interfere not at all with Americans who wanted to travel into the war zone. In all of these things, he was disregarding the advice of his own Secretary of State and the passionate advice of his own Secretary of State. And Barbara Tuchman, writing about the road to war, says that these two measures, permitting the unrestricted trade in munitions and lifting the ban on loans, those measures were not taken in the Allied interest, but in the American interest. To ban loans and embargo munitions would have closed off the wealth of unlimited orders, and Americans did not wish to suffer for their neutrality. Rather, they hoped to make a good thing of it. The problem is that the British could enforce a blockade on Germany, which meant that trade with Germany went down to almost nothing, while trade with Britain boomed, and Americans were making a lot of money on that. So with the German response came in February of 1915, when they announced very dramatically that the government would attempt to destroy all enemy ships within a stated war zone around the British Isles. The submarine was the weapon that they would use to do it. They led the world by far in submarine technology. They had a formidable fleet of submarines, but there was a problem with it. With the British blockade, a ship could appear and it could turn away an opposing ship without sinking it. Submarines couldn't do that, because once the submarine came out of the water and you could see it, you could fire on it. And the British were arming their own merchantmen. They were arming their own ocean liners. And they had guns on those ships, and it could have shot the submarines. And these were flimsy contraptions. They were very early submarines. So the only thing the Germans could use their submarines to do is to send out torpedoes and to sink ships without warning. Wilson never accepted this fact. He accepted the British blockade, but he never accepted the German determination to sink even British shipping, let alone American shipping. Now, the Germans never fired on American ships, not on civilian ships, but they did fire twice on American ships who were accompanying British cargo ships as part of a convoy. The most controversial episode, of course, involved the Lusitania. This was a great ocean liner, one of those luxury liners. It had been built as a rival to Titanic. And it was at one time the world's biggest ship. But the Titanic never got as much service as Lusitania, but they ended up in the same fate. Because in May of 1915, the Germans sank Lusitania, this luxury liner. It went to the bottom, killing 1,198 people, including 128 Americans. There was, of course, huge outrage in the United States. They had newsreel footage that showed some of the sinking, and they could show that in motion picture theaters, and people gasped and they were outraged. The Germans said, wait, this ship, and the British admitted it, was carrying munitions on it, not just passengers, and we had warned the British that we would sink their ship, the Lusitania, and we had warned Americans by putting ads in newspapers saying, don't go on board this ship. It's going to be subject to our blockade. It didn't matter. The indignation was very much there. And what was interesting about this is that President Wilson did not have political support on this. Ultimately, his Secretary of State, his own Secretary of State, William Jennings Bryan, who was in many ways the most popular Democrat in the country, didn't agree with him at all. Bryan believed that Wilson had to choose between affirming neutral rights to travel on any ship you wanted or to ship to anyone you wanted, or his desire to stay out of the war. He couldn't have both. He pressed on the president the course he believed would keep us out of the war. He wanted Wilson to deny armed merchant ships of any kind entry to any U.S. ports and to forbid U.S. citizens from traveling on any vessels of belligerents. That might have avoided the whole parade to war. And when Bryan responded to Lusitania, he said, why be shocked by the drowning of a few people if there is to be no objection to starving a nation, referring to the German hunger blockade. Bryan ultimately resigned over the issue, and the last voice for true neutrality left the administration. Wilson was determined to rein in German submarine warfare, and he began talking about preparedness and negotiating with the Germans at the same time to get them to change their tactics so he could win a victory on that particular issue. The Lusitania sank in 1915. It was nearly 2 full years before war was declared. What happened in between gave us plenty of additional chances to avoid war. Those were chances that were not taken. We'll tell you why not. Coming up. Get breaking news on AM870TheAnswer.com.
Stuck in traffic? We've got the answer.
Heads up on the eastbound 91 at Norwalk. We've got a pretty bad accident of an overturned car here blocking the fast lane. Traffic comes to a halt very quickly, so watch for that if you're on that 91 approaching Norwalk. Signal alert now on the 105 east at Crenshaw. The off-ramp is blocked, as well as the 120th Street on-ramp. Police activity going on there. I'm Lee Berry, AM 870, The Answer.
A federal judge in Massachusetts is ordering Bill Cosby's wife to give a deposition in a civil lawsuit against the famed comedian. The judge denied a motion this week by Camille Cosby's attorneys to keep her from testifying. The ruling comes in the case of 7 Massachusetts women suing Cosby for defamation. The 78-year-old comedian is free on $1 million bond after being charged in a separate 2004 sexual assault case in Pennsylvania. More than 1 million immigrants streamed into overwhelmed Europe in 2015.
Many of the immigrants are running from war and chaos in their dangerous homelands, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan. Europe has struggled to deal with the crisis. Germany and Sweden, which initially welcomed the immigrants, have now put border checks in place. The European Union is promising to quickly deport immigrants who are not refugees, but merely looking for better jobs. Many on the front lines of the crisis say the new year promises to be difficult unless there is dramatic change in how nations are dealing with these immigrants. I'm Rita Foley.
Gunfire at a Rowland Heights home left 4 people dead. A man shot and killed another man at a home on Batson Avenue. The man then turned the gun on 2 women, killing both of them. The suspect's son then wrestled the gun away from his father and shot him once, killing him. Sunny, highs to the mid-60s today. It's 55 in Van Nuys, 61 Los Alamitos. I'm Vicki Cox. Michael Medved continues next.
I'm Bruce Vail with Your Money Now. Would you mind taking a few extra steps to access a password-protected website like a banking website if it meant your personal information would be more secure? Researchers at the UK's Plymouth University have developed a new password system that involves shapes and emojis instead of regular words or phrases. The system, called GotPass, would require users to draw a shape instead of entering a password and then identify 2 emojis they previously selected. If the user picks the correct images, he or she is given a one-time passcode to access the account. Each time a user logs into the account, he or she must go through the process to receive a new one-time code. The researchers say their method is 98% hack-proof. The new system comes after Verizon found that 2 out of every 3 data breaches involve the exploitation of weak or stolen passwords. That's your money now.
If you're retired or retiring soon, starting this year with a good financial plan is critical. This is Ken Moraif, host of the Money Matters radio show. Please attend our free seminar.
Get a current analysis of what to do in today's market. Find out how to protect your retirement from a market crash and more. Choose 1 p.m. Saturday, January 9th, Ayers Hotel, Manhattan Beach. Tuesday, January 12th, Pasadena, Old Town. Wednesday, January 13th, Woodland Hills. Or Thursday, January 14th, Santa Ana. Reserve at moneymatters.net. That's moneymatters.net or call 800-994-0302.
AM 870, The Answer is everywhere. Here's our event director, Pamela.
What if you could have AM 870 The Answer in your purse or in your pocket? Well, now you can on the brand new, absolutely free, ultra-interactive AM 870 The Answer app. Now you can listen to AM 870 just about anywhere and interact with us. It's available at the App Store on all your mobile devices or at am870.info. That's am870.info.
Info to go. AM 870, The Answer.
You ready to let the dogs out? What? Do what?
Hi, Warren Eckstein here. Coming up on the Pet Show this week, the great debate. Are dogs smarter and more social than cats, or is that an urban legend? The truth about cats and dogs. You may just be surprised at the answers. Saturday mornings at 11 a.m. on AM 870, The Answer.
And on the Michael Medved Show, you can save 15% or even more on car insurance with Geico. Just go to geico.com or call 1-800-947-AUTO. The only hard part, figuring out which way is even easier. Woodrow Wilson's biographer, John A. Garrity, writes that if the president had accepted the not wholly unreasonable suggestion of the Germans that Americans stay off munitions-laden liners like the Lusitania, no United States citizens would have been killed in the disaster. And as a matter of fact, as to the charge that his resigned Secretary of State, William Jennings Bryan, was somehow secretly pro-German, Garrity writes, Bryan was not pro-German, but he believed the German violations of neutral rights were not essentially different from Allied violations. He thought that the United States could force both sides to obey international law by threatening to cut off the flow of vital American supplies. Such a policy, if adopted, would probably have kept America out of the war, but it might well have meant that Germany would eventually have triumphed. Wilson was certainly influenced by Bryan's arguments, but unlike his Secretary of State, he could not accept the possibility of German victory. That was also increasingly true because of the economic dependence that America had, and more, on trade with the Allies and advancing loans to the Allies. So Wilson needed to confront the Germans about America potentially going to war unless they limited their unrestricted submarine warfare, which was beginning to be devastating to British commerce and, by implication, to American commerce. The problem was that the Germans didn't take us that seriously, because American military weakness, as Garrity writes, actually encouraged the Germans to take actions that forced the United States into the fight. As early as summer of 1915, right after Lusitania, the American ambassador in Berlin complained, quote, "The people here are firmly convinced that we can be slapped, insulted, and murdered with absolute impunity." Colonel House, the president's friend and advisor, was saying, if war comes, it will be because we are totally unprepared, and Germany feels that we are impotent. So President Wilson began giving speeches about preparedness, calling for more federal spending, which he was very good at, but particularly for building up the U.S. Navy. But the problem was, in Congress, there was tremendous dispute about Wilson's demands about the submarine warfare. For instance, one of the leading Democrats in Congress, later the Democratic majority leader, Claude Kitchen of North Carolina,
pointed out that if Americans would sacrifice their right to go on belligerent ships in the submarine zone as readily as they had sacrificed their equal right to try to force Britain's illegal North Sea mine zone, Germany would never have been guilty of taking any Americans' lives. And as a matter of fact, Wilson taking a position, I cannot consent to any abridgment of the rights of American citizens in any respect. What we are contending for in this matter is of the very essence of the things that have made America a sovereign nation. Well, Richard Hofstadter, political scientist at Columbia, said that this was a rationalization of the flimsiest sort, for Wilson continued to accept a great deal more than a single abatement of right at the hands of the British without the same concern for the effect upon the whole fine fabric of international law. There were more disputes, and finally, partially because of the big push for American preparedness, there were 125,000 people, civilians, who marched in a preparedness parade down Fifth Avenue in New York City. There were 250 brass bands, and it was a huge deal. And by the way, this was also part of the way that Wilson was preparing for his re-election campaign. And just in time for the re-election campaign, in 1916, about a year after the sinking of the Lusitania, Wilson finally got the Germans to agree that they would no longer attack merchant shipping with submarines. And this was considered such a huge, huge achievement, it became the centerpiece of the president's drive for re-election. But that drive was all based upon one simple slogan, repeated again and again and again. He kept us out of war. This made it particularly difficult for that same president to lead to war within basically a month of being inaugurated for a second term. We will get to that and more in this special broadcast of the Medved Show.
To order this special show, World War I, The Great War, or America's Greatest Mistake, go to MedvedHistoryStore.com.
This is AM 870, The Answer.
Here's George Foreman with InventHelp.
Hi, I'm George Foreman. Do you have an idea for a new product or invention? People ask me all the time, George, how do I get my idea in front of companies? How do I get a patent? What do I do next? Do you have the same questions? I'll tell you like I'll tell them all. Call my friends at InventHelp.
Call InventHelp today for free information. InventHelp has been helping inventors for more than 30 years and has sales offices nationwide. InventHelp can submit your invention to companies who are interested in receiving new ideas. If you have an idea and want to try to patent it and submit it to companies, you should call InventHelp today for free information.
Listen, I can't guarantee a company will be interested in your idea, but I believe every inventor deserves the opportunity to step into the ring and take their best shot. Put InventHelp in your corner.
For free inventors information, call 1-800-933-IDEA. 1-800-933-IDEA. That's 1-800-933-4332.
Trying to sell your old car? Instead, donate your vehicle to Heritage for the Blind. Pickup is free, and your donation is tax deductible. Just call 1-800-785-9618. Heritage for the Blind accepts cars, vans, trucks, and boats, whether they run or not. Call right now and receive a free 3-day vacation voucher to over 50 locations. Call 1-800-785-9618. Donate your car today. That's 1-800-785-9618.
I'm feverish and stuffy, but I still see you checking out my sweet cough cloud. See, when I cough, I make a cloud of 3,000 droplets of saliva. Impressive, no?
No.
But your eyes say yes.
Ugh, cough clouds are sick. Take new Robitussin CF Max Severe. It delivers powerful relief of cough, sore throat, stuffy nose, and fever. Robitussin, because it's never just a cough. Use as directed.
Stuck in traffic? We've got the answer.
We have a signal alert now in Hawthorne, the 105 east at Crenshaw. The off-ramp is shut down and the 120th Street on-ramp to the 105 closed. This due to police activity. No word on when it might open up again. Eastbound side of the 210 jammed from Santa Anita to Irwindale. Up in Sylmar, the North 5 slow and go from the 210 to just past the 14. We have an accident that cleared out there a little while ago. I'm Lee Berry, AM 870, The Answer.
Hi, it's Hugh Hewitt from my friends at Gulliver's Restaurant in Irvine, about which I've been talking for more than a decade. It's a very special place for dining, whether it's a birthday, an anniversary, or even a quick business lunch. It's always a special at Gulliver's Restaurant, where their famous prime rib is prepared every day just the way you like it. They also have that New York strip or the delectable pepper-crusted ribeye. We're talking real meat. And if you want seafood, sure, Maine lobster, king salmon, the fresh catch of the day. But really, at Gulliver's, you go for the meat. Remember, Gulliver's has the perfect banquet room, good for any occasion, accommodating up to 100 guests without a room change. Call 949-833-8411, 949-833-8411, and ask for Karen, the banquet manager. Gulliver's also offers delicious catering platters available for pickup on a 24-hour notice. Gulliver's is now taking your Valentine's Day reservations. So call now at 949-833-8411. Gulliver's in Irvine, off the 405 at MacArthur Boulevard, across from John Wayne Airport, 949-833-8411.
Mike Gallagher isn't so sure the president's strategy in ISIS will work.
Isn't it reasonable that if somebody's on the no-fly list, they shouldn't be allowed to buy a gun? That's the kind of stuff that's going to defeat ISIS, isn't it? Now, that's what I call prioritizing. Holy cow. Lord help us.
The Mike Gallagher Show. Weeknights at 11, right after Larry Elder at 9 on AM 870. The Answer. Wishing all our listeners a prosperous, safe, and happy New Year. From all of us at AM 870. The Answer.
As the European nations suffered through one bloody battle after another, Americans prepared for battle of another kind. It was the great election of 1916. Woodrow Wilson had been elected very much as a minority president because the Republicans had been split. This time, the Republicans had come together. Theodore Roosevelt had rejoined the Republican Party. He strongly supported the former governor of New York, a justice of the Supreme Court, Charles Evans Hughes. Hughes was an unbelievably distinguished guy who was respected by everyone, loved by almost no one. He was the last presidential nominee of any party with a beard. In fact, Roosevelt, though he supported him, sometimes referred to Hughes, because of his caution, as the bearded lady. But Hughes ran a strong campaign and won support from not only the Republican Party, but from the Progressive Party, bringing the progressives back into the fold, or at least most of them. Wilson, on the other hand, was running a campaign that had basically only one note. The note was, he kept us out of war. And he also followed a very, very interesting political strategy. And it was probably a very clever political strategy because it helped him in this underdog fight. The strategy was to attack Roosevelt, not Hughes. Because Roosevelt, of course, had said all kinds of things that were frightening to people because he believed that America should be involved to put an end to the war and to put an end to German ambitions, and he tilted very much in the British direction. For instance, he wrote an essay in 1960 called America First, A Phrase or a Fact. And basically, Roosevelt felt that the United States could not play a subsidiary role to any nation. We had to become the leader of the world, and the only way we could do that is by getting directly involved in the war. And he wrote, individuals and nations who preach the doctrine of milk and water invariably have in them a softness of fiber, which means that they fear to antagonize those who preach and practice the doctrine of blood and iron. The phrase blood and iron had been associated with Bismarck and the Germans, of course. And in response to that kind of talk, the Democrats held their convention, and they were electrified by one of the most remarkable and memorable keynote addresses. It was by a former governor of New York, Democratic governor of New York, named Martin Glynn. And he just drove the delegates crazy, drove them into raptures, basically, by emphasizing the fact that that Wilson had not taken America to war. For instance, he said, without orphaning a single American child, without widowing a single American mother, without firing a single gun, without the shedding of a single drop of blood, the president has wrung from the most militant spirit that ever brooded above a battlefield an acknowledgement of American rights and an agreement to American demands, talking about the submarine warfare. And then Bryan himself got up, and William Jennings Bryan, the great commoner, said, "My friends, I have differed from our president on some of the methods employed, but I join with the American people in thanking God that we have a president who does not want this nation plunged into war." They demonstrated and cheered beyond enthusiasm, and as a matter of fact, they adopted a special plank in response to Bryan's speech and in response to Glenn's speech. The plank said, in particular, we commend to the American people the splendid diplomatic victories of our great president, who has preserved the vital interests of our government and its citizens and kept us out of war. After the convention, Wilson spoke to the Secretary of the Navy, Josephus Daniels. The Assistant Secretary of the Navy, by the way, was a young man named Franklin D. Roosevelt. But Wilson spoke to Josephus Daniels, and he said, "I can't keep the country out of war. They talk of me as though I were a god. Any little German lieutenant can put us into the war at any time by some calculated outrage." The campaign unfolded. Everyone knew it was going to be close, and on election night, it seemed apparent that Hughes had won a fairly comfortable victory, and Wilson would be a one-term president. And the problem of avoiding war would go back to the hands of the Republicans. The difficulty was that there was a very, very close vote in California. And California's 13 electoral votes, and this is way out in the West Coast then, at a time where that was very distant, very far away, the California 13 electoral votes would have swung the election. Whoever carried California would win. Hughes went to bed confident that he had won. Wilson went to bed confident that he had lost. And there's a story about a reporter who knocked on the door of Hughes's home, and the butler came to the door and said, "The president is in bed and cannot be disturbed." The reporter then slapped shut his notebook and said, "Well, please tell Mr. Hughes when he wakes up that he's no longer the president." Wilson had carried California by 3,800 votes. That was it. And with it had won the election. He came back to Washington after November, happy that he had won. The Democrats had actually lost power in Congress over the years. The idea that Wilson had won some kind of triumphant election, it wasn't true. But the American people had clearly shown that they did not want the country to go to war. And in fact, they even supported some of the more remarkable examples of Wilsonian rhetoric. In response to Roosevelt in an earlier speech before the campaign, Wilson had even talked about being too proud to fight. In fact, he said there is such a thing as a nation being so right that it does not need to convince others by force that it is right. There is such a thing as a man being too proud to fight. So what led us to give up that sort of pride and to send 117,000 young Americans to their deaths? We will get to that and more in this special broadcast of the Medved Show.
World War I, the Great War, or America's Greatest Mistake.
Keep it right here on AM 870, The Answer.
If you love freedom, if you love America like I do, then I'd like to invite you to stand with me and well over 1 million other patriotic Americans by joining AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens. AMAC is the fastest growing 50-plus organization in the country, and there's good reason for that. AMAC fights for individual liberty, fiscal sanity in Washington, keeping a lid on an ever-growing federal government, and so much more. In fact, AMAC fights for the conservative values that have made this country great. AMAC membership will also give you access to exceptional money-saving benefits and discounts, such as group rates on auto insurance, a low-cost roadside assistance program, travel discounts, and access to all things Medicare. Join AMAC today at www.amac.us. That's www.amac.us. Or call 888-262-2006. Again, that's 888-262-2006. Tell them Michael Medved sent you.
Hi, this is Tom Girardi from Champions of Justice.
And Dave Dino.
Thanking those of you who have called in regarding the program.
Each week, we interview another exciting champion of justice, those who make the laws and those who protect your rights through the rule of law. This next year on AM 870, The Answer, we'll continue to bring you the most important legal newsmakers of the day who affect your life. So join us every Saturday and Sunday night at 5. Tom?
Happy New Year.
He's known as the Great one of the leading constitutional scholars of our day, a fire-breathing dragon on the conservative side, author of 5 New York Times bestsellers, one of the top national talk show hosts in America. He broadcasts every day from his bunker deep in the bowels of a nondescript building. His name is Mark Levin. And you can hear him live every weekday 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. just before Hugh Hewitt at 6. The Answer is finally here. AM 870. The Answer.
Hi, Hugh Hewitt here with a nugget of financial wisdom. A lot of smart people quote Scripture. There's wisdom and safety in a multitude of counselors. Now ask yourself why. It's because a counselor is objective and unbiased. Bottom line, they don't have a dog in your financial fight. They just tell you what is smart to do. That's why I've spoken for the money guys all these years. Robert Mike Cohn, what can you provide in that first meeting with a prospective client?
Give them probably for the first time in their working career an objective third-party viewpoint of what they own, why they own it, and who's getting paid on each of those assets that they have in their holdings.
So meet with the money guys. Get a third-party view of your investments. You'll discover a critical mistake you haven't seen, or you'll get some direction confirmed. Either way, you win. Call 800-206-0600. 800-206-0600. It's free. It's confidential. 800-206-0600. Or go online to seekcounsel.com.
Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC.
Like us on Facebook. Just search for AM 870. The Answer.
Portions of the Michael Medved Show are brought to you in part by the Discovery Institute. To learn more, click on the Science and Culture banner at michaelmedved.com.
The fateful decision that led directly to America's entry into World War I wasn't made in the White House. It wasn't even made on Capitol Hill in the Congress of the United States. It was made at a place called Pless Castle. It was a German castle near the German-Polish border, where on January 9th, 1917, the top German commanders, Field Marshal Paul von Hindenburg, General Erich Ludendorff, the Admiral of the German Navy, Henning von Holzendorf, and the Chancellor, the top civilian leader of Germany, Theobald von Bethmann-Hollweg, all arrived. The Kaiser himself arrived just a few days later. He was irritable. He was upset. They were facing a desperate situation. Germany was being starved out by the British hunger blockade, and they had a proposal on the table to resume unrestricted submarine warfare. They needed to face 2 questions. First, would that bring America into the war? Second, could Britain then be defeated by the unrestricted submarine warfare before the Americans were able to get their military together and cross the Atlantic? The generals all assured the Kaiser that if they were given the right to let their submarines roam free and to prey on all the Allied shipping, that Britain could be defeated by that fall. and the Americans wouldn't have a chance to send anything across the way. The chancellor, the civilian leader, said, no, you cannot do this. You are underestimating what will happen if the Americans get into the war. And they all argued against him. And he basically, the argument against the Chancellor Bettman Hoveg was, look, the Americans are already providing all the supplies and all the munitions. They can't really do much more to help the British. So the Kaiser overruled him and said, yes, starting on February 1917, right before Wilson would be inaugurated for a second term, we're going to start unrestricted submarine warfare. The Kaiser signed the order. The admiral and the generals stood up. They saluted. They marched out of the room. The chancellor stood behind, slumped down in his chair. His aide entered and said, Herr Kanzler, what's wrong? He said only two words, Fini Germaniae. Germany is finished. He had a sense of what was coming. The American people did not. But the fateful decision had been made in Germany and was followed up by a series of American decisions that changed our country forever, but allowed us nonetheless to remain the greatest nation on God's green earth. Get breaking news on AM870TheAnswer.com.
Hi, this is Gordon Deal from America's First News, wishing all our AM 870 family happy and joyous New Year.
This is AM 870, The Answer, a division of Salem Media Group on the NASDAQ as SALM. Live streaming on the web, AM 870, The Answer app, KRLA, Glendale, Los Angeles, Orange County. Stuck in traffic? We've got the answer.
Pretty good drive in downtown L.A., although we do have an accident just clearing now on the northbound 110 at Stadium Way. That's causing about a half-mile backup as you head into Elysian Park. Our traffic report brought to you by Fletcher Jones Motor Cars. Almost 9,000 clients made their Mercedes-Benz dreams come true at Fletcher Jones Motor Cars, and they're still the #1 dealership for the 17th consecutive year. Fletcher Jones Motor Cars. I'm Lee Berry, AM 870, The Answer.
New laws are kicking in around the world today. Sweden is starting new identity checks for people entering the country from Denmark, which is a major route for refugees. In India, drivers in Delhi will be able to use their car only every other day to reduce pollution in the city. In Saudi Arabia, elected female representatives take their seats after an unprecedented election. In this country, in New Hampshire, anyone convicted of sexual assault while hunting, trapping, or fishing will have their fish and game license revoked. BB and airsoft guns sold in California will be required to have bright markings to distinguish them from real firearms. A menu change at a fast food chain has fans in a panic.
The food at Atlanta-based Chick-fil-A is loved by millions. It even prompted comedian Tim Hawkins to write a song about it.
Chick-fil-A, I could eat there 7 times a day.
The restaurant chain has announced that their famous coleslaw will be dropped from the menu. The company announced it will no longer carry the sweet side dish starting January 18th in an effort to offer more healthy variety to its menu. To help ease the pain for slaw fans, Chick-fil-A is releasing the recipe for the first time ever. Get some cabbage, vinegar, sugar, dry mustard, salt, and mayo, and you can make your own. I'm Randy Fuller.
The floats that rolled along the Rose Parade route on New Year's Day can still be viewed. If you missed the parade, you can see the floats along Sierra Madre and Washington Boulevards. Floats can be viewed this afternoon until 5 and 9 to 5 tomorrow and Sunday, according to Rose Parade officials. Sunny today, highs to the mid-60s. Tomorrow, about the same. And then we have a chance of rain starting Sunday night through Thursday. It's 61 degrees in Santa Monica, 60 in Irvine. I'm Vicki Cox. Michael Medved continues next.
I'm Jennifer Kashiko with Your Money Now. If you got engaged last night and now have a wedding to plan, you may be about to join the ranks of the couples who are choosing to have a red wedding, one that will put them into big-time debt. Some 36% of couples paid with credit cards, and 32% of couples agree that having access to credit and loans will allow them to spend more than their budget. The average cost of a U.S. wedding last year exceeded $31,200. Women of color have the drive to rise through the corporate ranks, but don't always receive a boost from higher-ups that others do. A new report from McKinsey & Company and LeanIn.org shows that Black, Hispanic, and Asian women harbor leadership ambitions to a greater extent than white women. But nearly half of Black women say they haven't received senior-level support in advancing their career, compared with about a third of white, Asian, and Hispanic women. The market is closed today for the New Year's holiday. That's your money now.
I'm Pamela, event director with AM 870 The Answer. Did you know that your favorite radio station is on Facebook? Now you can find out instantly what topics your favorite talk show host will be discussing and up-to-the-minute news. This is also your opportunity to connect with your favorite radio personalities and interact with other AM 870 The Answer listeners. Follow us today on Facebook at KRLA 870 AM. Want more answers? Go to am870theanswer.com. That's am870theanswer.com.
Do you worry that the stock market is a huge bubble ready to pop? If you're retired or retiring soon and can't afford to lose your life savings in the next stock market crash, don't miss the next free Money Matters Retirement Seminar. Choose 1 p.m. Saturday, January 9th, Ayers Hotel, Manhattan Beach. 7 p.m. Tuesday, January 12th, Courtyard, Los Angeles, Pasadena, Old Town. 7 p.m. Wednesday, January 13th, Hilton Woodland Hills. Or 7 p.m. Thursday, January 14th, Holiday Inn, OC Airports. Please reserve now at moneymatters.net. That's moneymatters.net or call 800-994-0302.
Here's your seat, sir. 2A.
Thank you.
Thank you for flying with us today. Sir in 2A, where did you get that suit? It really is first class.
Thank you. Ask him.
Hi, I'm Roger of Roger Stewart Clothes. At my store, you'll find the exact suit you want in your size in modern, slim, or classic fit from our huge selection, and save up to 70% off retail prices. We have a huge selection of superbly tailored European suits from the best Italian fabrics. Shirts, slacks, ties, belts, sport coats, and formal wear. And at Roger Stewart Clothes, you'll always get the inner circle, friendly customer service you deserve.
Does he always travel with you?
Coincidence.
Okay, where'd he go?
Dennis Prager here, 877 Suits for You. That's 877 SUITS, the number 4, the letter U. 877 Suits for You, Roger Stewart Clothes. Suits that should be expensive, but they're not. They are the finest suits I've ever owned.
Tired of working hard to make someone else's dream come true? Always dreamt of being an entrepreneur? Hi, I'm Karen Franklin, CPA and co-owner of URSOP, Entrepreneur Rollover Stock Ownership Plan. URSOP has helped thousands of people own their own business by using their own retirement funds as startup capital. The URSOP plan is completely legal and pre-approved by the IRS. Live your dream. Invest in yourself. Call URSOP 866-693-7767. 866-693-7767.
Wake up, you're all finished. Now, take a look at your beautiful new smile.
Wow, feels like I just dozed off. And you're finished already? Thank you.
Having healthy teeth is easy when you visit Smile Magic Dentistry. Walk in with broken or neglected teeth, walk out with a beautiful, healthy new smile, all done while you sleep. And they make it so affordable with free exam, free x-rays, and free sleep. Dr. Ray at Smile Magic is so good, his patients come to him from all over the country because they won't trust anyone else to work on their mouth. A healthy body starts with healthy teeth. Don't live with broken, loose, or neglected teeth another day. Be one of the next 25 callers to Smile Magic and get free exam, free x-rays, and free sleep. A $1,500 value. Free! With 0% financing for the next 12 months. Call Dr. Ray at Smile Magic Dentistry now. 888-929-SMILE. 888-929-SMILE. That's 888-929-SMILE. 888-929-SMILE.
AM 870. The Answer.
And now, America's #1 show on pop culture and politics. This is the Michael Medved Show.
And another great day in this greatest nation on God's green earth. And America never looked greater in comparison to the other countries on earth than in Christmas season of 1916. In Europe, virtually every nation was suffering. The French troops on the line in France in the middle of World War I were about to mutiny. The Germans were desperate and hungry, suffering from the hunger blockade that the British had imposed. Russia already crumbling, and on the verge of revolution. The Germans had largely won on the Eastern Front. But back in the United States, peace seemed to be at hand. Why? Well, we'll explain that and why President Wilson was so wrong about his expectations of peace. That part of the amazing story, World War I, the Great War, or America's greatest mistake. At the end of 1916, President Wilson had just won re-election. He celebrated Christmas with his family, his daughters, and his new wife, Edith, in the White House. And he also caught the Christmas spirit by sending private notes to all of the leading belligerents, telling them that he wanted them to state their terms for peace. And he planned a new initiative for peace. He told his confidants that war had never been further from his mind. He was more confident than ever that peace would be at hand. And the newly reelected president, who hadn't even been inaugurated for his second term yet, told the Senate of the United States he wanted to make a very important speech on January 22nd, 1917. Again, before he was even re-inaugurated, he went to the Senate and he spoke about how a lasting peace must be a peace without victory. Victory would mean peace forced upon the loser, he said, a victor's terms imposed upon the vanquished. It would be accepted in humiliation, under duress, at an intolerable sacrifice, and would leave a sting, a resentment, a bitter memory upon which terms of peace would rest. Not permanently, but only as upon quicksand. Only a peace between equals can last. His words now seem prophetic, and as a matter of fact, even at the time, his speech caused a sensation. He'd never gotten so much praise for any utterance he had ever given. Senator John Shafroth of Colorado called it, quote, the greatest message of a century. And the Atlanta Constitution wrote an editorial saying that the president's speech was startling, staggering, astounding, and the noblest utterance that has fallen from human lips since the Declaration of Independence. Confronted with that kind of praise, President Wilson said, I have said what everybody else has been longing for, but has thought impossible. Now it appears to be possible. But the Allies were offended by his speech. They hadn't sacrificed everything for peace with victory. In fact, they had thought that Wilson would be more in their corner. His advisor, Colonel House, complained in his diary that Wilson now stood for peace at any price, that he had lost his punch. He subtly tried to bring that up with the president, and then Wilson said flatly, pounding the table, there will be no war. He didn't know that the German High Command and the Kaiser himself had already authorized, before he even spoke, the resumption of unrestricted submarine warfare. And they had also done something else. And it is unclear how high up the chain of German command this decision went. But before the February 1st resumption of unrestricted submarine warfare, and remember that resumption of the unrestricted submarine warfare, they expected it would bring Americans into the war. And as to why that would be all right, Admiral von Holzendorf put it, the United States can scarcely engage in more hostile activities than she has already done up to this time. They assumed that the biggest assistance the United States could ever give the Allies in the event of entering the war was monetary assistance, economic assistance, material assistance, and they were already getting that kind of assistance from America. They would disrupt that assistance with the submarine warfare. The German foreign minister at the time was a guy of very, very limited competence named Arthur Zimmermann. And he proceeded to make one of the greatest diplomatic blunders imaginable. he sent a coded telegram to the Mexican government, and it was supposed to be carefully coded so no one would see it. And here's what the telegram said. It was very brief. It said, we intend to begin on the 1st of February unrestricted submarine warfare. We shall endeavor, in spite of this, to keep the United States of America neutral. In the event of this not succeeding, we make Mexico a proposal of alliance on the following basis. Make war together, make peace together. Generous financial support, and an understanding on our part that Mexico is to reconquer the lost territory in Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. Ouch! This was obviously inflammatory. It was also based on the fact that Wilson had sent American troops into Mexico twice before the World War I even began, and the Germans assumed the Mexicans would be very interested in this proposal. But before they could respond, the British, who were incredible at cryptography, they were in World War II, they were in World War I, the British had intercepted the telegram, and they broke the code, and they showed it to the Americans, and then they later released the telegram to the press. Can you imagine how folks in Texas may have felt about the German Kaiser through the German Foreign Minister, Arthur Zimmermann, offering Mexico to regain lost territory in Texas, Arizona, New Mexico if they made war against the United States? When this came about, when the announcement of unrestricted submarine warfare came about, when all of a sudden Wilson was again confronted, and now much more than ever, with actually firing on American ships. Up to this time, the Germans mostly had hit just merchantmen, British merchantmen. Now they hit American ships as well with their new fleet of U-boats, and it was devastatingly effective. With all of this going on, Wilson's secretary, Joe Tumulty, brought to him an Associated Press bulletin, which had the news of Germany's decision. And the president, according to his secretary, Joe Tumulty, turned gray, and he said, "This means war. The break that we have tried to prevent now seems inevitable." But even after they began sinking American ships, even after the Zimmermann telegram and all of the controversy around it, Wilson hesitated. He did not feel that he could go to war. The new Secretary of State, Robert Lansing, who was very pro-British and wanted Wilson to go to war, said the president is resisting the irresistible logic of events. At the end of March, House came to the White House, Colonel House, and he found Wilson repeating the same phrase again and again. What else can I do? Is there anything else I can do? He was losing sleep. And on April 1st, right before he went to Congress to deliver his war message, he invited a correspondent, Frank Cobb, of the New York World. He was one of the administration's strongest supporters, a favorite reporter, into the White House. And here's what he said. He told Cobb, "Once lead this people into war, and they'll forget there ever was such a thing as tolerance. To fight, you must be brutal and ruthless, and the spirit of ruthless brutality will enter into the very fiber of our national life, infecting Congress, the courts, the policeman on the beat, the man in the street." Cobb wrote, President Wilson thought the Constitution would not survive it, that free speech and the right of assembly would go. He said a nation couldn't put its strength into a war and keep its head level. It had never been done. If there is any alternative, for God's sake, let's take it, he exclaimed. But while he said those words, his finished war message was already on his desk, and he was prepared to go to Congress to ask for a declaration of war. That declaration and more coming up.
You're listening to a special show, World War I, The Great War, or America's Greatest Mistake, on The Michael Medved Show.
This is AM 870, The Answer.
Have you ever thought, I wonder if I should finally try eHarmony? Well, now is the perfect time. This is eHarmony founder Dr. Neil Clark Warren. Right now, our free communication weekend is on. This Wednesday through Tuesday only. Free communication weekend means you get unprecedented access to eHarmony. So don't wait. Visit eHarmony and connect for free. This Wednesday through Tuesday only.
If you love freedom, if you love America like I do, then I'd like to invite you to stand with me and well over 1 million other patriotic Americans by joining AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens. AMAC is the fastest growing 50-plus organization in the country, and there's good reason for that. AMAC fights for individual liberty, fiscal sanity in Washington, keeping a lid on an ever-growing federal government, and so much more. In fact, AMAC fights for the conservative values that have made this country great. AMAC membership will also give you access to exceptional money-saving benefits and discounts, such as group rates on auto insurance, a low-cost roadside assistance program, travel discounts, and access to all things Medicare. Join AMAC today at www.amac.us. That's www.amac.us. Or call 888-262-2006. Again, that's 888-262-2006. Tell them Michael Medved sent you.
I'm feverish and stuffy, but I still see you checking out my sweet cough cloud. See, when I cough, I make a cloud of 3,000 droplets of saliva. Impressive, no?
No.
But your eyes say yes.
Ugh, cough clouds are sick. Take new Robitussin CF Max Severe. It delivers powerful relief of cough, sore throat, stuffy nose, and fever. Robitussin, because it's never just a cough. Use as directed.
Stuck in traffic? We've got the answer.
It's a bit of slowing on the 101 heading northbound just before you get to the 110. There was a crash at 8th Street heading south into South LA. It's wide open to the 105, no incidents, and nothing new in Carson at the 110 southbound to the 405 connector. This report brought to you by Toyota of Orange. For 40 years, no one has sold more Toyotas in Orange County than Toyota of Orange. With 2,500 vehicles to choose from, you're going to get the Toyota you want at the best possible price, period. I'm Sabina Mora, AM 870. The Answer.
The angels from Visiting Angels are standing by to care for the loved ones in your life who need in-home care. If you have a family member or friend who needs assistance at home with hygiene, meals, light housework, errands, or companionship, I hope you'll consider Visiting Angels, America's choice in senior home care. If you know someone who wants to remain independent, these are the people who can help. Rates are surprisingly affordable, and up to 24-hour in-home care is available. You can even select your caregiver before care begins. Franchise opportunities are also available. With more than 500 franchised locations nationwide, there's an office near you. Call toll-free today at 877-374-LIVE or online at visitingangels.com. For senior home care from the real-life angels of Visiting Angels, call toll-free 877-374-LIVE. That's Visiting Angels, America's choice in home care at 877-374-LIVE or online at visitingangels.com.
Hi, it's Hugh Hewitt here with Aaron from California Deluxe Windows.
At California Deluxe Windows, each window is custom-made. Then they are installed using our proprietary technique that is so precise, we never break your walls. Your house could be covered in potato chips and we wouldn't break one. I will give you 20% off of your entire order and 1 year of interest-free financing. But you have to call right now.
Call California Deluxe Windows at 877-WINDOWS. That's 877-WINDOWS.
CCLB number 774518.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
In days of Auld Lang Syne, Happy New Year. AM 870. The Answer.
If you've been holding off ordering beautiful designer window coverings because you're a little stressed about making a measuring mistake, don't worry. Blinds.com makes measuring super easy and totally risk-free. Go where we go for new window coverings at Blinds.com. The music of the great George M. Cohan, Grand Old Flag, very popular Broadway composer of the time. One of the songs no doubt played at the inauguration of Woodrow Wilson for his second term as president. He was inaugurated for his second term as president on March 5th, 1917. The Zimmerman telegram had already alarmed American opinion. The German declaration of unrestricted submarine warfare had already claimed additional American lives and additional American ships. The entire nation waited as the president delivered his inaugural address. And he said, with his truly remarkable gifts for rhetoric, "We are provincials no longer. The tragic events of the 30 months of vital turmoil through which we have just passed have made us citizens of the world. There can be no turning back. Our own fortunes as a nation are involved whether we would have it so or not. These, therefore, are the things we shall stand for, whether in war or in peace." And then he listed what he considered to be essential principles. He said that the essential principle of peace is the actual equality of nations in all matters of right or privilege, that peace cannot securely or justly rest upon an armed balance of power, and then that national armaments shall be limited to the necessities of national order and domestic safety. National armaments shall be lifted? Are you kidding? In the midst of this brutal war, which America hadn't even formally entered yet. Wilson called the Senate into extraordinary session in less than a month after his inauguration. He addressed them on the 2nd of April, 1917. And as he came to Capitol Hill, and the joint session of Congress waited for him silently, he said, "Gentlemen of the Congress, I have called the Congress into extraordinary session because there are serious, very serious choices of policy to be made, and made immediately, which it was neither right nor constitutionally permissible that I should assume the responsibility of making. The present German submarine warfare against commerce is a warfare against mankind," declared the President of the United States. "There is one choice we cannot make. We are incapable of making. We will not choose the path of submission and suffer the most sacred rights of our nation and of our people to be ignored or violated. The wrongs against which we now array ourselves are no common wrongs. They cut to the very roots of human life. With a profound sense of the solemn and even tragical character of the step I am taking, and of the grave responsibilities which it involves, but in unhesitating obedience to what I deem my constitutional duty, I advise that the Congress declare the recent course of the Imperial German government to be, in fact, nothing less than war against the government and the people of the United States." Congress listened silently. The president went on to document what he believed had been the profound German offenses. And then Wilson added these extraordinary passages, and reading them again, almost 100 years later, it still seems hard to believe that a president of the United States would say this on the verge of declaring war. "We are now about to accept gauge of battle with this natural foe to liberty, and shall, if necessary, spend the whole force of the nation to check and nullify its pretensions and its power. We are glad, now that we see the facts with no veil of false pretense about them, to fight thus for the ultimate peace of the world and for the liberation of its peoples, the German peoples included, for the rights of nations great and small, and the privilege of men everywhere to choose their way of life and of obedience. The world must be made safe for democracy. Its peace must be planted upon the tested foundations of political liberty. We have no selfish ends to serve. We desire no conquest, no dominion. We seek no indemnities for ourselves, no material compensation for the sacrifices we shall freely make. We are but one of the champions of the rights of mankind. We shall be satisfied when those rights have been made as secure as the faith and the freedom of nations can make them. just because we fight without rancor and without selfish object, seeking nothing for ourselves, but we shall wish to share with all free peoples. We shall, I feel confident, conduct our operations as belligerents without passion, and ourselves observe with proud punctilio the principles of right and of fair play we profess to be fighting for. He repeatedly said America was not going into war for self-interest. On what other basis do you lead a nation to war if not self-interest? It's extraordinary. That same Wilsonian strain in foreign policy is unfortunately still alive. Wilson concluded with almost unparalleled eloquence, and the Congress was enraptured and captivated, as ultimately the whole country was. He said, "It is a fearful thing to lead this great peaceful people into war, into the most terrible and disastrous of all wars, civilization itself seeming to be in the balance. But the right is more precious than peace, and we shall fight for the things which we have always carried nearest our hearts, for democracy, for the right of those who submit to authority to have a voice in their own governments, for the rights and liberties of small nations, for a universal dominion of right, by such a concert of free peoples as shall bring peace and safety to all nations, and make the world itself at last free. To such a task we can dedicate our lives and our fortunes, everything that we are, and everything that we have, with the pride of those who know that the day has come when America is privileged to spend her blood and her might for the principles that gave her birth and happiness and the peace which she has treasured. God helping her, she can do no other." The Congress rose and applauded and cheered. They debated the declaration of war. There were 50 members of the House who voted against the declaration of war. 50. 6 U.S. senators, including some of the most prominent progressives, voted against the declaration of war. But we're turning from the Capitol building, riding in the presidential car. Wilson loved cars. And with the applause of Congress and America at large still echoing in his ears, he was sitting next to his secretary, Joe Tumulty, and he said, "My message today was a message of death for our young men. How strange it seems to applaud that." More in a moment.
To purchase this special program, World War I, The Great War, or America's Greatest Mistake, go to michaelmedved.com.
Keep it right here on AM 870, The Answer.
Stuck in traffic? We've got the answer.
On the 210, heading eastbound away from Monrovia to the 605, a few brake lights at the 605 connector, otherwise quiet to the 57 into San Dimas. El Monte traffic much better on the 10. The crash reported on the 101 north at Alameda. That's being moved to the right shoulder, and traffic is starting to ease up. It's a good-looking drive in Hollywood on the 101, both directions, full speeds. I'm Sabina Mora, AM 870. The Answer.
Unforgettable. A singer who amazed America with a breathtaking duet with her late father has herself died. Natalie Cole was 65 when she succumbed to heart failure, possibly aggravated by hepatitis and other maladies. Natalie Cole had been scheduled for a New Year's Eve concert at Walt Disney Hall, but that was canceled when she got sick. She burst into superstardom in 1991 when she sang Unforgettable with her late father, the jazz great Nat King Cole. And a star from a popular TV show is dead.
Wayne Rogers is dead at the age of 82. He died in Los Angeles after complications from pneumonia. Rogers was best known for playing Captain Trapper John McIntyre on TV's MASH, but he also starred in House Calls, for which he received a Golden Globe nomination. After acting, Rogers was a successful business and real estate investor. Randy Fuller, Los Angeles.
A ride to or from LAX is costing more today on 3 flyaway bus routes. Officials at LAX say fares for the Van Nuys, Metro Orange Line, and Union Station routes of the bus service rise from $8 to $9. Rate hikes are on the one-way trips are supposed to reduce the bus line's operating deficit by $1.3 million. Sunny today, highs to the mid-60s, our lows the upper 30s, mid-40s, and tomorrow 60s again. It's 61 in Santa Monica, 61 Los Alamitos. I'm Vicki Cox. Michael Medved continues next.
This is Todd Avakian of Sierra Pacific Mortgage. Thanks to the AM 870 listeners for all of your support. May you have a fantastic holiday and a prosperous new year.
Having healthy teeth is easy when you visit Smile Magic Dentistry. Walk in with broken or neglected teeth. Walk out with a beautiful, healthy new smile, all done while you sleep. Be one of the next 25 callers to Smile Magic and get free exam, free x-rays, and free sleep. A $1,500 value. Free! With 0% financing for the next 12 months. Call Dr. Ray at Smile Magic Dentistry now. 888-929-SMILE. That's 888-929-SMILE. 888-929-SMILE.
Larry Elder here with a tantalizing bit of information about my exotic Western Mediterranean cruise next August where you can join me. One of our overnight stays will be on the island of Ibiza, the birthplace of Christopher Columbus and the now undisputed party capital of the world. Get ready to dance. This amazing cruise is aboard the luxurious Crystal Symphony, the very best. And the cruise is all-inclusive, which includes air travel, unlimited drinks, that's right, adult beverages, excursions, taxes and fees, tips, all included. I will be your captain. Sign up early to get your choice of luxurious accommodations. Just log on to am870.info and use the keyword Larry. That's am870.info, keyword Larry. It's all put together by my friends at Willett Travel, a Frosch company. Call 800-994-5538. That's 800-994-5538.
AM 870, The Answer is everywhere. Here's our event director, Pamela.
What if you could have AM 870 The Answer in your purse or in your pocket? Well, now you can on the brand new, absolutely free, ultra-interactive AM 870 The Answer app. Now you can listen to AM 870 just about anywhere and interact with us. It's available at the App Store on all your mobile devices or at am870.info. That's am870.info.
Info to go. AM 870, The Answer. Wishing all our listeners a prosperous, safe, and happy New Year. From all of us at AM 870, The Answer.
Find a great deal on a brand new car at Autotrader.com. Compare prices and special offers on new cars from local dealers. Autotrader.com, the ultimate new car marketplace. 1 week after President Wilson asked for the declaration of war in April 2nd, 1917, he had a visitor at the White House. The visitor was Theodore Roosevelt, the former president. His old rival, someone who had attacked Wilson repeatedly, attacked Wilson for being delaying and insufficiently resolute and for misleading the country. They had run against each other for president in 1912. And TR, the old bull moose, who was 58 years old, came to Wilson and asked for permission to lead a division of volunteers into battle. Since there was a war, he wanted to be part of it. He had led, obviously, his division of his regiment of volunteers, the Rough Riders, to glory in the Spanish-American War. That was 19 years before. Wilson said no to Roosevelt. But all four of Roosevelt's sons enlisted, and they all saw combat. Theodore Jr. and Archie were both wounded in action. Theodore was gassed during the war. The youngest son, 20-year-old Quentin, became a pilot, and he was killed when his plane was shot down a few months before armistice. It shattered Roosevelt's life. Another White House visitor, William Jennings Bryan, also in his late 50s, also volunteered to serve in combat, despite the fact that he had been so much opposed to going to war initially. Wilson also thought Bryan should stay home and help the cause of propaganda, because propaganda was crucial. The war was not initially overwhelmingly popular. Remember, 50 members of the House and 6 senators had voted against it. One of America's most influential politicians, the leader of the Socialist Party, a guy who had gotten 1 million votes in a country that was much smaller, only 90 million Americans at that time, Eugene Victor Debs went to jail for opposing the war. Wilson helped to organize a new agency called the Committee on Public Information. He recruited a gentleman named George Creel, who was a Denver newspaper man, to run it. And they recruited 75,004 Minutemen, whose jobs was to go around to churches. They went to movie theaters. They spoke in intermissions at movie theaters. They spoke at shopping centers. And they were supposed to give 4-minute little speeches talking about how wonderful and appropriate the war was and to build up public enthusiasm. They also were urged others to inform on any man who spreads pessimistic stories, cries for peace, or belittles our efforts to win the war. That was the mood of the country, just as Wilson foresaw before he asked for the declaration of war. But for the mood of the country, nothing more important than music, than Over There, the song written by the great George Cohan. The words came to him, the music came to him almost miraculously as he was riding between New Rochelle and New York on a train shortly after the declaration of war.
Over there, send the word over there, that the boys are coming, the drums rum-tumming everywhere, so prepare, say a prayer, send the word to beware, we'll be over, we're coming over, and we won't come back till it's over there. We're coming over, and we won't come back till it's over, over there.
But before they could get over there, that sung and performed by Michael Feinstein, by the way, before they could get to France, it took a long time, months and months of recruitment and training, and they barely made it in time to save the Allied cause. Because while the British and the French were waiting for the Americans to arrive over there were literally 1 million French men who were mutinying, deserting their ranks. The Germans had launched a new offensive, and this war to which America committed itself did not look like it was over there. Not yet. And what about the peace? That too and more we'll get to in moments. Get breaking news on AM870TheAnswer.com.
Hi, this is Rhett Rasmussen of BestHotGrill.com. You've heard about our Solaire infrared grills at BestHotGrill.com, but did you know we also make the best gas logs for your fireplace? You've probably seen Rasmussen gas logs and fireballs on TV and in the movies. We've got sizes to fit all fireplaces, styles to fit every decor, and we even do custom designs for large and unusual fireplaces. Lighting these logs is as easy as pushing a button. Realistic Rasmussen gas logs look great even when the fire is off. For regions prone to power outages, gas logs are an excellent source of emergency heat with no electricity required. We've been making them since the 50s, so you can buy a Rasmussen gas log with confidence. So go to BestHotGrill.com to find the products you need to keep you warm inside and outside of your home while eating great grilled food. Learn more at BestHotGrill.com. That's BestHotGrill.com, BestHotGrill.com.
So here's a question for you. How many more bad dates is it going to take before you try eHarmony? Yep, eHarmony. Look, eHarmony has helped over 1 million people get married. That's 565,000 marriages to date. They make over 10 million matches a day. Can you believe it? And this New Year's weekend, you can try eHarmony.com for free. That's right, free. See, this Wednesday through Tuesday is eHarmony's free communication weekend. You get unprecedented access to eHarmony, including sending messages to people who interest you. It's truly the first step in finding that perfect someone to make you really happy. You can have a relationship that is passionate, loving, and long-lasting. Visit eHarmony.com and connect for free this New Year's weekend. Wednesday, December 30th through Tuesday, January 5th only. So what are you waiting for? Visit eharmony.com and connect for free this New Year's weekend. eharmony.com. That's eharmony.com.
Stuck in traffic? We've got the answer.
It's sluggish on the south end of the 5 freeway, trying to get over to Valley View because of an earlier collision, but overall a quiet drive in Norwalk, heading northbound to the 605. Traffic on the 605 is moving well through Santa Fe Springs and into Whittier and Rose Hills. Traffic on the 710 is quiet. From Bell to Linwood, heading further south to the 91 Connector Road, no issues. 91 traveling eastbound to Bloomfield, that's a closure, and it's because of a collision. I'm Sabina Mora, AM 870. The Answer.
Hugh Hewitt reacts to his involvement in the GOP debate.
Hugh Hewitt is a talented guy. He's a great guy. He said very nice things about me.
I am very happy about that. I did my best to be fair to every candidate. We worked very, very long and hard, and CNN is a very fair organization, and having a conservative in the room does change the question set, does move everything towards that which Republican primary voters want to know.
The Hugh Hewitt Show, weeknights at 6, right before Larry Elder at 9 on AM 870. The Answer. Hugh Hewitt, weekdays at 6.
This is not a hard problem. It does not take a long time to diagnose. It takes a long time to fix it. What do? You invest in surveillance. You invest in community relations. You invest in making sure you know that people can safely report to lines that are not tracked, that will not show up, that they believe their neighbor is a terrorist. If you think your neighbor is a terrorist, I'll just ask you right now, how many people out there think their neighbor is a terrorist and have not called the police?
This is the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Feel free to call me. I don't track your numbers. 1-800-520-1234. I bet you there are a lot of you, just like the neighbor of these terrorists said on camera. I didn't want to get labeled an Islamophobic. Now, you're not worried about that, by the way, if you're not Islamophobic. You really don't. If you are like me, colorblind, race blind, religion blind, you don't worry about people calling you a racist or a bigot. You don't worry about that, but maybe if you're younger, you worry about that.
Hugh Hewitt. The Hugh Hewitt Show. Same Hugh, different time. Weekdays, 6 to 9 p.m. on AM 870. The Answer. Read the latest headlines on our website, am870theanswer.com.
We don't talk about Blinds.com. We shop there. In fact, we've ordered from Blinds.com 3 different times. That's why I know these people are committed to giving you unbelievably good service along with great prices. They'll never just leave you sitting there high and dry. See what I mean at Blinds.com. Not everyone volunteered to join the new war like Theodore Roosevelt did and like William Jennings Bryan did. In fact, there were only 73,000 volunteers, far less than expected in the first 6 weeks after the declaration of war, so Congress had to institute a draft. And there was resistance to the draft. And there was strong opposition to the war. A lot of that opposition, of course, was confined to the German-American community. We were taken up with war hysteria. People banned the teaching of German in our schools. Sauerkraut was retitled Liberty Cabbage. The Frankfurters were no longer called Frankfurters. They were called Liberty Sausage. There was a great attempt to basically demonize the Germans and to demonize anyone who wanted to affirm German identity. And the 2 largest immigrant groups in the country both tended to be anti-war. Irish Americans, the 2nd largest immigrant group in the United States at a time when America was 30% foreign-born, Irish Americans were also opposed to the British and the French and often opposed to America going to war because during the war in 1916, there had been the uprising in Ireland, the Dublin Rising, and the Germans had promised to help the Irish win their independence, and the British had been very ruthless in suppressing drives for Irish independence. With all of that going on, there was, of course, enough enthusiasm to send 2 million Americans overseas, but they only got there some full year after the declaration of war. It took that long to recruit, to train, to equip, and to transport Americans in 1917. But after Americans arrived and became fully engaged in the fighting in May of 1918, they turned the tide of battle and turned it very decisively. Americans experienced horrendous casualties, but so did everyone else who participated in that particular war. And aside from the influx of men and materiel and support that turned the tide of battle, another contribution of the war was Wilson and his rhetoric and his gift for propaganda. He issued his famous 14 points, and he did it without the approval of his allies. In January 1918, he laid out what he considered to be the basis for a peace. The 14 points included: 1, open treaties openly arrived at. Number 2, absolute freedom of navigation on the seas and peace in war. Number 3, removal of all economic barriers and establishment of equal trade conditions among all parties to the peace. 4, multilateral arms reductions, in other words, disarmament. 5, adjustment of colonial claims based on the interests of the populations concerned. And his final of the 14 points was, quote, a general association of nations to guarantee political independence and territorial integrity for all members. He had been dreaming of a League of Nations, and he believed that going to the old idea of a peace without final victory, that could be achieved. Part of what happened is the exhausted Germans heard Wilson, took him seriously, and in October of 1918, after staggering casualties, after enormous sacrifices, with starvation and hardship at home, the German government sued for peace, not to the British, who they'd been fighting for 4 years, not to the French, but to President Wilson. Wilson negotiated directly an armistice with the Germans that took hold on November 11th, 1918, the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. And the world celebrated, and a peace conference was called. How was the peace lost? Because it was lost, because, of course, as the world knows, 21 years later, we were at war again. President Wilson made 2 crucial mistakes about the Versailles Conference. Number 1, he went there personally. All historians agree with his advisors. It was American tradition. A president was not supposed to be away from the White House, away from American territory, for months on end. President Wilson was. But aside from that, by being at the peace conference personally, he was reduced in status. He could have been the disinterested leader of the whole world if he had communicated by telegraph and telephone with people in Europe, and he had remained at home, but he went personally. The other problem, he did not have opposition representation with him at the peace conference. One of the things that demonstrates how unpopular the war was in the middle of waging this war, and right after the war was all but won, just days before the armistice, there was a congressional election, and Wilson lost both houses of Congress. The Republicans took over both houses of Congress, in a sense because people may not have shared his soaring visionary expectations for making peace, and the Republicans seemed more hard-headed and practical. When he came back with the Versailles Treaty, there were 2 problems with it. One problem was that all of the promises of the 14 points about open covenants openly arrived at, about no imposition and no punitive peace, and he had promised it again and again and again, they made a punitive peace. Germany was subjected to, number 1, a war guilt clause in the treaty that said that they were responsible for the entire war. They didn't feel that they were. They felt they'd waged basically a defensive war. They were also required to pay onerous reparations, which crippled their economy for years and helped to lead to Hitler. Aside from that, Germany was dismantled. It lost 1/8 of its territory and 1/10 of its population that was assigned to other nations, and also provided the basis for Hitler later. But Wilson got his League of Nations. The problem with the League of Nations is the covenant of the League, and notice covenant, the religious language. The covenant of the League of Nations included a clause that would have obligated the United States to go to war without a declaration of war by Congress. It would have taken U.S. sovereignty and given it to the League of Nations. The Republicans were deeply opposed. They wanted to ratify the treaty and the League, but only with reservations. The results? Tragic. Could it have been otherwise? We'll get to that and more coming up. This is AM 870, The Answer. Michael Medved here for American Federal Rare Coin and Bullion. When it comes to precious metals and the word trust, I don't typically use those words in the same sentence. Like many of you out there, I too have been burned a little bit by certain dealers who do not protect your best interests. But I can now tell you that American Federal is the dealer that I personally trust with my precious metals portfolio. American Federal will not only sell you the gold, silver, or platinum that's right for your investment goals, they'll go a step further and actually educate you on the proper way to maximize the value of your holdings. I'm confident that through American Federal's expertise and personal attention, I'm getting the best and most correct advice that I've ever gotten, and that I've gotten the proper coins. I know you'll feel this way too. If you're concerned about the growing global economic problems and you want to protect yourself with some security by owning precious metals, call my dealer of choice. That's American Federal, 800-221-7694. That's 800-221-7694. Ask for their free coin performance review. AmericanFederal.com.
I'm Pamela, event director with AM 870 The Answer. Did you know that your favorite radio station is on Facebook? Now you can find out instantly what topics your favorite talk show host will be discussing and up-to-the-minute news. This is also your opportunity to connect with your favorite radio personalities and interact with other AM 870 The Answer listeners. Follow us today on Facebook at KRLA 870 AM. Want more answers? Go to am870theanswer.com. That's am870theanswer.com.
You know the story of Hansel and Gretel, where Hansel left breadcrumbs on the trail so they could find their way back home? That's what you do when you use public Wi-Fi, or shop online, or give out your social security number at your doctor's office or the bank. You leave breadcrumbs on the trail for someone to possibly steal your identity and take everything you own. At LifeLock, we use proprietary technology to detect signs that someone has picked up your breadcrumbs to take what's yours. And unlike free credit monitoring services that only alert you, we have a dedicated resolution staff to help clean things up if all those breadcrumbs get messy. No one can prevent all identity theft or monitor all transactions at all businesses. But with LifeLock, you can keep doing the things you do every day and feel better protected. Isn't it time to help protect yourself from someone eating your financial lunch? Plans start at $9.99 a month. Right now, you can get 10% off. Go to LifeLock.com and enter promo code NEWS.
Mark Levin says the president is leaving a legacy.
Barack Obama has been an incredibly successful man, not president, but man in what he's wanted to do. He wanted to take down this country, and he's taken us down. He wanted to turn American against American, and he's turned American against American. He wanted open borders, he's got open borders. He wanted to turn this economic system inside out, he's turned it inside out.
Mark Levin, weekdays at 3, right before Hugh Hewitt at 6 on AM 870. The Answer. Mark Levin is coming up at 3 on AM 870. The Answer.
You're listening to a special show, World War I, The Great War, or America's Greatest Mistake, on The Michael Medved Show.
Wilson came home from Versailles in 1919 to a nation already deeply disillusioned with his war to end all war. The Republicans, who dominated both houses of Congress and who dominated the U.S. Senate that had to approve the Treaty of Versailles, were not unalterably opposed to it. They were not isolationists. They, in fact, were internationalists who wanted America to lead the world. But they did not want to compromise on several of the points involving American sovereignty. Wilson did also refuse any compromise at all. Historians say that if he had accepted the reservations that had been proposed by Senator Henry Cabot Lodge, the treaty would have won nearly unanimous support in the Senate of the United States, and we would have gone into the League. But Wilson refused. Instead, he launched a campaign to win public support for the treaty. He got sick in the middle of the campaign, traveling around the country by train, giving speeches to adoring crowds. He suffered his first stroke in Paris when he was still negotiating at Versailles, then another minor stroke on the train, and then a much more serious stroke back at the White House in Washington. He was incapacitated. He should not have continued as president. He had lost the power to concentrate more than 5 or 10 minutes at a time. His speech was slurred. He He lay in a White House bed with darkened shutters, unavailable to the world. And so ended his presidency. Could it have been different? Could the entire disaster of World War I, and yes, it was a disaster, none of our war aims were achieved, could it have been different if we had stayed out? Pat Buchanan has written an interesting book on this subject. It's called A Republic, Not an Empire, Reclaiming America's Destiny. I don't agree with everything in the book, but he gives a good summary of the arguments against American involvement. He writes, no one can say for certain how history would have unfolded had America stayed out of the Great War. Without the U.S. government becoming the lender of last resort to finance the war effort, with no prospect of millions of American troops pouring into the trenches, the Allies would probably have been forced to negotiate an armistice or sue for peace. The Kaiser's army, bloodied but undefeated, would have gone home. Germany would have become a firewall against any drive into Central Europe by Soviet Russia. A strong, united, and prosperous Germany would not have spawned a Hitler. There might have been no Holocaust, no quarter-century reign of Stalin, no Cold War. Had America stayed out, there would have been no Versailles, no occupation and dismemberment of the German nation, no American war dead, no debt, no era of disillusionment. Had America not financed the war, it surely would have ended earlier than it did, with far fewer dead. Hard to argue with that proposition, and hard to look at the war with so much American heroism on the battlefield, with such heroic rhetoric from Woodrow Wilson, without seeing it not as a pathetic failure, but as tragedy of the very highest order, but a tragedy and a mistake with which Americans must come to terms to understand the recent history of this greatest nation on God's green earth.
Keep it right here on AM 870, The Answer.
Hi, this is Larry Elder, the Sage from South Central, and I want to wish all the AM 870 listeners a very happy New Year.
This is AM 870, The Answer, a division of Salem Media Group. On the NASDAQ is SALM. Live streaming on the web, AM 870, The Answer, app, KRLA, Glendale, Los Angeles.